just let the consequences play themselves out. He's taken a decision, an executive decision, well within his authority, and he should live with the consequences. I'm curious to hear what you make of the latest crisis in the government of national unity. Then I want to tell you about a story that we will highlight towards the end of the show. It raises interesting debates about, sometimes the law coincides with morality, but not always, right? What you consider to be the morally right thing may not necessarily be the right thing to do in terms of the law. And we've seen that play itself out over and over again. What am I talking about? The Supreme Court of Appeal has laid down the law in an interesting area of personal injury claims, but not without much debate and perhaps some moral controversy. In a recent case, the court has decided not to award compensation to a child born with severe brain injury, which was caused by the negligence of hospital staff. Specifically, it refused to compensate the child for the element of damages that is known as pain and suffering. And that doesn't need any explanation. Your pain and suffering. The court refusing to compensate the child for that. And also the other element known as loss of amenities of life. That second element, loss of amenities of life, talks to the ability of the child to live a full life, participate in the activities, adventures and hobbies of life, which has now been hindered by this permanent disability, which, as I told you, was in turn caused by the negligence of the staff at the public facility. The debate arises because of the reasons that have been given by the court to refuse to grant that compensation to this child. And basically, the argument and the reasoning is that the child is not conscious of his pain and suffering, and in any case will never be aware of the fact that he lives a different life to other children, basically has lost the amenities of life, and therefore it serves no purpose, says the court, serves no purpose to compensate the child for pain and suffering that they are not conscious of, and loss of amenities of life that they will never be conscious of. As you can imagine, this is a bit controversial. So at about 8:45, we'll bring in Professor Henny Klopper, who is emeritus professor at the University of Pretoria, but also a practicing attorney and author of works on the area of personal injury claims and damages, to just weigh in on all of this. But I'm keen to hear your thinking as well about it. Lastly, let me quickly flag this story, which we will also cover. As the FIFA Club World Cup 2025 is gearing for its knockout stages, all 4 clubs that represented the African continent have now crashed out of the tournament. These clubs are Mamelodi Sundowns, Al Ahly of Egypt, Esperance of Tunisia, as well as Morocco's Wydad Casablanca. They've all failed to emerge from the group stages and into the round of 16. But in many instances, these teams' exits was not without some gallant and resilient performances that displayed continental football's growth and potential. But are we happy to talk about growth and potential? What were the factors that led to African teams crashing out early in the FIFA Club World Cup? We'll have that conversation at about 10:07 with Nkululeko Nkewu, who is co-founder of Itiski Media and also a football broadcaster. So that's some of what we will cover in the next 3 hours. The full bench of the Morning Brief team is ready, able and willing to serve you once again this morning. And Musa stands at the ready with your hourly and half-hourly news updates. Rob Byrne confirms he has your traffic updates. Zaikan confirmed for your sport. Melissa Buta with your Morning Brief in brief, and that's coming up shortly. Dauleng Lichela, as always, right on the money. She will have your business and market news covered, as well as Sipho Mandula Mo Africa with your Africa update at about 20:07 this morning. Please give me a call, weigh in on these and other conversations that may be exercising your mind. The number to dial is 086 000 20 Please send me WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. On social media, we are at SAFM Radio on X. We are SAFM Radio on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, we are live on our YouTube channel. That is SAFM Radio. So what are we waiting for? Let's get the Friday edition of the Morning Brief underway.
EFC is live this Thursday, after months of talk.
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
The middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach and Sua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN OTP feature and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
All right, let's start this morning's briefing session with your morning brief in brief with Melissa Puta. Melissa, good morning. This was one of those days when there were so many contenders for our lead story when we were debating it. The first story you want to highlight could have been one of those lead stories. Tell me about this arrest of the head of crime intelligence in the SAPS.
Morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, this is quite an interesting story. Major General Dumisani Khumalo, head of crime intelligence in South Africa's police service, has been arrested on corruption charges related to the unlawful purchases of 2 luxury properties worth 45 million rand. He was detained by the NPA Investigating Directorate upon arrival at OR Tambo International Airport. The deals involving a boutique hotel in Pretoria North and a commercial building in Durban allegedly lacked proper ministerial approval. Khumalo's co-accused SAPS CFO Major General Philani Lushaba is reportedly missing. Following these developments, the arrest has sparked renewed concerns about a leadership and integrity crisis within the SAPS senior management.
And the intrigue continues within crime intelligence, especially with that mention of Major General Philani Lushaba, who you say is reportedly missing. So that's an interesting one, and we will certainly be following it up and following it through in the coming days. Tell me about the death toll from the Eastern Cape floods. It continues to rise, does it?
Yes, so the sad news in the Eastern Cape continue to come in. The death toll from the devastating floods remains at 101, with a 12-month-old baby, the youngest confirmed victim, found yesterday. Search efforts continue into a third week, with rescuers still looking for missing children in the Mthatha River. A new cold front is expected to worsen the conditions over this weekend. The provincial government faces a road infrastructure crisis, with nearly 50 roads still inaccessible and a repair funding shortfall of over 800 million, while only 100 million has been redirected for emergency work. Communities remain stranded, and officials warn that the death toll could rise over this weekend.
You know, Melissa, I was telling the team in studio here that when I worked in Zimbabwe, I learned a bit of Shona. And in Shona, if someone promises to do something and you are skeptical whether they will deliver on the promise, you say, Totenda Tawona. We will be thankful when we see you implementing. And I think this is apt for this next story. The city of Joburg undertaking that they will spend some 150 million rand on resurfacing, 85 kilometers of road. All I have to say is, Totenda Tawona.
You know, Thulasizwe, this is supposed to be good news for the Joburg residents.
I'm just, as a Joburg resident, I've reached a point where, yeah, man, I'm at Totenda Tawona stage.
So the city of Joburg has announced that a 149.9 million investment to resurface large parts of key roads in 2025 and 2026 financial year has been approved and made. So they're saying that this is an increase from the previous 105 million, which was allocated. The JRA will focus on heavily deteriorated roads in areas including Kliptown, Sandton, Soweto Highway, and the M1. The program aims to improve road quality, drainage, and road longevity. Daily pothole repairs and sidewalk reinstatements continue alongside the resurfacing. Officials say the upgrade is essential due to increased traffic volumes and deteriorating infrastructure. So you know what? Maybe we will see how this goes.
I don't know, Melissa. Thank you for that. Have a great weekend. That's Melissa Puta there with the morning brief in brief. And that's informed by the reality. I mean, part of it, what really annoyed me, I saw this really bad road in one of the suburbs in Joburg. And I found myself bargaining and saying, oh, well, I'd be happy if they did the main roads, even if we struggle inside the suburbs. Then that's when I realized that, no, man, something is wrong here. Something is wrong. These roads, even within the suburbs and townships, actually used to be maintained. Why are we bargaining and willing to accept that, well, as long as they take care of the main arterial roads? I don't know. City of Joburg? Let's see. Totenda Tawona, as I said.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So let me give you a sense of what your weather will be looking like on this Friday. There are 3 warnings that have come through from the South African Weather Service. The first one is a yellow level 2 warning. It says damaging waves resulting in damage to coastal infrastructure and disruption to beachfront activities. That is expected along the coast between Plettenberg Bay and Cape Vidal. Then you have a yellow level 2 warning, which says damaging coastal winds resulting in localized disruption of small harbors and or ports for a short period of time. Small vessels at risk of taking on water and capsizing in locality and difficulty in navigation. That is expected between Plettenberg Bay and Kosi Bay. And the last one is a yellow level 1 warning. It says disruptive snow resulting in traffic disruption due to icy roads, isolated loss of vulnerable livestock and crops over Sengu and Elundini local municipalities in the morning. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be fine with a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 14. Johannesburg, fine 1 to 11. Okay, let me say that again. Johannesburg will be fine with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 11. Mbombela, fine becoming partly cloudy, 11 to 19. Polokwane, fine 7 to 15. Mahikeng will be fine with a minimum of -1 and a maximum of 13. Bloemfontein will be partly cloudy with morning fog, -1 to 9. Kimberley, partly cloudy, -1 to 11. Uppington will have morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy with a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 11. Cape Town will be cloudy with light rain, 10 to 14. George will be cloudy, becoming partly cloudy in the evening with a minimum of 8 and a maximum of 15. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy with a minimum of 9 and a maximum of 18. East London will be partly cloudy, otherwise fine with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 18. Durban will be cloudy with isolated morning showers and rain, becoming fine by the afternoon with a minimum of 15 and a maximum of 20. Richards Bay, cloudy with isolated morning showers and rain, becoming fine from late morning with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 20. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will be cloudy with isolated morning showers and rain, becoming fine from late morning with a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 16.
Kathy Motlatlana on SAFM.
Abongile, let me maybe give you a chance to come in as well.
I had been to a mainstream school and I knew what it could offer. It was also a boarding school. The first thing I asked the principal was, are we all going in the same classroom? My mother said, well, why are you asking him? And I said, well, because I'm visually impaired, but I'm not going to be able to learn if I can't see. And what about my classmate who has deafness? How are we all going to be taught in the same classroom when my other classmate has autism and they learn in a certain way versus the child who has a learning impairment? These are the things that I witnessed as a child, and realizing these are the real deprivations that every child should have.
Abongile Kantini is a diversity, equity, inclusion.
If you're ready to talk, I'm here to listen, and nothing is off the agenda.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
An agreement signed by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Alain Berset, now means, at least in theory, that top Russian political and military officials responsible for launching the war on Ukraine may be prosecuted before a special European tribunal. The agreement establishes a special tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine. The Council of Europe says the tribunal will fill a jurisdictional gap that renders the International Criminal Court, which prosecutes war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide, unable to prosecute the crime of aggression. But will this tribunal be effective in practice, or is it merely about the principle, the symbolism of it all, whatever the material effect on the ground? Let's speak to Stephen Gruzd, who is head of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs. Let me start with that question, Stephen. From what we've heard and the architecture that's been defined and explained at this point of this special tribunal, what do you make of it? Is it likely to be effective, or is it more symbolic?
Well, I think it is. Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's both. I think the symbolism of it is to say that nobody is above the law, even if you're a head of state, and that the crime of aggression is one that should be prosecuted and that somebody should be held accountable for it. You know, the International Criminal Court doesn't cover the crime of aggression, as you mentioned, and the challenge with all of these things is actually making the arrest, because as we know, Putin has been there's a warrant out for his arrest under the International Criminal Court, but he's been to countries that have not arrested him, and that's one of the challenges, is actually bringing the suspects to justice. I think this adds to the pressure on Putin. I think it brings the Ukraine conflict back into the news, whereas the Middle East has really dominated the news over the last couple of months, and people have perhaps a little bit forgotten about the Ukraine conflict. This brings it squarely back onto the news agenda, and potentially could see these leaders who are responsible for the crime of aggression in the dock.
Do decisions like these, the setting up of tribunals like these, within the material conditions that are at play at the moment, do you think that they are partly premised on, believing in a future scenario where major changes in the Russian political system and governance system perhaps happen, resulting in greater cooperation with bodies such as the ICC and other international tribunals, including this one? Because other than that, it would appear to me to be very academic, unlikely to have the effect of hauling any top Russian political and military leaders before this tribunal.
Well, I think it plays into, this is something that Ukraine has been seeking right from the beginning, right from 2022 when the full-scale invasion happened. And I think it adds to the pressure on Putin and the top leadership of Russia. But you're right, I think it is largely a symbolic gesture, because how would he be arrested and brought into trial? I think it's all going to play into the negotiations that have started under the Trump administration, but really have gone nowhere. And partly that is because of the conditions that Putin has put for the end of the war, which essentially fulfilled all of his war aims, but fought all of those of the Ukrainians. So, it's largely symbolic, but it's another plank, it's another piece of the puzzle that will help will contribute towards hopefully ending the war and bringing people to justice.
All right. Thank you for your insights this morning. That's Stephen Cruz, who is head of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning. It's all eyes on Cape Town tomorrow, where they've got the Springboks in action against the Barbarians. Barbarians head coach Robbie Deans emphasizing that his side, while holding immense respect for the Springboks, won't merely be chasing shadows. He praised their trademark bravery and flair, stressing that South Africa is approaching the fixture with full test match intensity.
Oh, I think some respect for the Springbok jersey, first and foremost. Playing at home, obviously, the Barbarians is a well-known brand. This is the first occasion that we've played each other in Africa. So, Presley doesn't like losing at the best of times. But they're proud men. And as you quite rightly say, they're all capable in their own right. A lot of them have got some big histories. They've got like Sam Cane, obviously Peter, Keanu Healy. So that blokes like that, when they strap the boots on, they strap them on to compete.
Soccer Banyana have touched down in Morocco, the scene of their 2022 continental triumph. The tournament for the Women's Africa Cup of Nations kicks off on the 5th of July, and Banyana will open the defence of their title against Ghana on Monday, the 7th of July. Elsewhere, Manchester City turned on the style to steal top spot in Group G at the Club World Cup with a 5-2 win over Juventus. And in another match, Al Ain rallied to a 2-1 victory over Wydad in Washington, D.C., both teams' final matches of the FIFA Club World Cup. Cassius Mailula scored early for Wydad, but nevertheless, his team coming out second best. And finally, tennis. The British number 5 Dan Evans believes he put his name back out there after his run at Eastbourne ended with defeat. He had a quarter-final defeat. He did upset the world number 13 Tommy Paul, but fell to the American Jensen Brooksby a day later. We'll be back serving up sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, 19-year-old Kamogela Baukudi, who was kidnapped earlier this month, has been found alive in Wepener. The grade 11 learner from Marti du Plessis Special School was kidnapped while being driven home from school in Bloemfontein. Police Crime Intelligence Head Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo is expected to appear at the Pretoria Magistrates Court today. Khumalo and other senior police officials were arrested at OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg yesterday. And the foreign ministers of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo are expected in Washington, D.C. today for the signing of a peace agreement that's expected to be witnessed by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Yeah, very good morning. Just on that, there will be some significant build-up of traffic before and after tomorrow's big international clash featuring the Springboks. Going to be very well attended. One way to avoid all those traffic hassles is a free My City Stadium shuttle. It's quite extensive. You can get the shuttles from Century City, from the CTICC, from Tybolt Square, and from the Civic Centre as well. So you can leave your vehicle well away from the traffic, well away from the venue. Get on that free My City Stadium shuttle direct into the venue and direct back again. They start at 12 noon and the last of the shuttles coming away from the stadium at about 9:30 tomorrow. Matters this morning, Joburg's N1 North pretty heavily backed up on a busy highway run up into Deep Cliff Interchange, return down to Uncle Charlie's. It's all jamming. N3 North at Spraitview looking busy as well today. Durban, the Bluff Road closure in place now between Doon Road and the M7. That's due to a large hole that's finally opened up after plenty of attempts to repair it. So Bluff Road, it's a full closure on that section. And Cape Town, N2 inbound Borchers Quarry has been reopened after an all-day closure yesterday. That'll alleviate some of the traffic problems we saw yesterday. And Chappers Peak Drive remaining closed due to rockfalls that need to be attended to after this week's adverse weather. Okapsevek, the alternative route. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Ndauling Lechela for the first update of the morning. Ndauling, there's this talk that has been doing the rounds, I suppose, about Shell and BP, a possible tie-up, but Shell is denying all of that.
Morning, Thulas. You're absolutely right. Shell has poured cold water on reports that suggested it's making a bid for rival BP. Now, Shell said that it has not made an approach to the company and no talks have taken place. The oil giant emphasized that it is bound by UK regulations, which prohibits it from making an offer for BP for the next 6 months. This rule is designed to provide clarity and stability in the market, and by making the statement, Shell is complying with the takeover code and avoiding any potential ambiguity. Now, according to the regulations, the 6-month ban on making an offer for more than 30% of BP's shares can be shortened if another bidder for BP emerges or if BP invites an offer. This means that while Shell is currently prohibited from pursuing a bid, circumstances could change that would allow it to reconsider its position. Now, Shell's statement comes after the Wall Street Journal cited sources on Wednesday saying that Shell was in talks to acquire BP.
That will be interesting to watch. In other news, Nike says just do it, and I suppose the earnings and sales says maybe not so much.
Not so much. I don't know about that. But what we do know is that they believe that the worst is behind it. This as it takes another hit amid its turnaround efforts. The group reporting a 12% decline in sales and profits also under pressure. Despite this, Nike's finance chief, Matt Friend, is optimistic about a moderate recovery ahead, saying headwinds are expected to ease moving forward and forecasting sales to decline by mid-single digits in the current quarter, which would be better than the 12% drop in sales in its fiscal fourth quarter. Now, Nike is concerned about Trump's trade policies, saying the tariffs are expected to increase costs by about $1 billion in fiscal 2026. The company plans to mitigate this cost over time by adjusting its supply chain, working with factory and retail partners, and implementing price increases. Now, about 16% of Nike's supply chain is currently in China, and the company expects to reduce that to the high single-digit percentage range by the end of its fiscal year.
All right, recap for us market activity from yesterday, as well as cast an eye ahead in terms of what we've seen thus far and into the day.
So green screens stateside with stocks shrugging off a downbeat GDP print. Both the Nasdaq and S&P 500 closing near record highs as the risk-on sentiment fuels financial markets. The mood similar at home, with the all-share closing 0.67% higher, boosted by a 2.6% increase in the Resources 10 complex. Now, that index benefiting from higher platinum and palladium prices, and that boosting our PGM miners. Some weakness, however, coming through on the currency side, with the rand pulling back from 7-month highs at 17.86 to the dollar this morning. Over in Asia, trade is mixed. While geopolitical risks somewhat subside, there are trade jitters creeping in as we near that July 9th deadline.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lechela with your first update of the morning. She'll be back just after 7:30 with more insights for you.
Africa Update on SAFM.
To say your mix this morning is interesting, Sipho, would be an understatement. Good morning to you. Let's start in Bangui in the Central African Republic. Some sad news coming out of there.
Refreshing morning, Thulas, and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Indeed, Thulas, as we are concluding this month of the African Child and the Soweto month, Bangui children, 29 children, Thulas, were sitting for their high school exam when there was a stampede. What happened, Thulas, was an explosive of a power transformer that set this panic, and now 200 children are also injured. This is in one of the schools in Bangui that even the education minister said they will take quick measures to look at the circumstances of the accident. The Prime Minister also visited the hospital to see those injured students to assess their conditions. Very sad to us when you look at Central African Republic, what it has went through, and then you have this negligence or irresponsibility to us when you have a power of a transformer injuring and killing most of the young girls in CAR.
Yeah, and this is the story that made me to make the comment I made about an interesting mix, Sipho. Tell me about news out of Bujumbura and the demand and the call by that government for the United Nations to recognize a Hutu genocide in 1972.
This motion has been put by the Burundian Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Pierre Claver Ndayisariye, who has said that the international community needs to acknowledge what happened. And this is between the years of 1972 and 1975. And that's why he said they want to bring the matter before the UN Security Council, because as the TRC, which will say it's a transitional justice mechanism, they've been investigating many cases. They said there have been exhumation of mass graves. There is a compiling of evidence that says that the target violence was against the Hutu population. And this is the call that Burundi say it might maybe assist also to heal in the contribution of the peace and stability in the Great Lakes.
Sure. So then another story that has some of its tentacles here at home. I've been seeing these videos of SANDF soldiers arriving and hugging their loved ones after many, many months of being away on service in the DRC. Tell me about the DRC cabinet receiving a briefing about that process.
That is quite true. Looking at how we have played a role in the DRC, me and you, we cannot just smile and watch, because we have played a role in the DRC since 1996. Coming in 2025, Makati, Kombozo, Chaveni, getting a post-briefing yesterday, saying 1,718 soldiers have returned after the Battle of Sake and Goma. But also, we can say, was it a failed mission of SADC, or was it a failed mission of SNDF, who were part of contributing troops to the mission, hence you still have MONUSCO there, you still have the UN peacekeeping mission. Now, the return of this soldiers has raised a lot in terms of how are we going to deal with the peacekeeping efforts in many African countries. How are we going to now reintegrate those peacekeepers with their families? Because there was tension between January and February when this happened. But the Minister of Defense also, and he had already spoken about this last month to us, about the high-level consultation that must be held around the return of our soldiers and the work that they are doing in the Eastern DRC.
Yeah, and speaking of that conflict then, we know that there are these negotiations under the auspices of the United States that have been taking place. There was a key demand by the DRC that Rwandan troops should immediately leave the Eastern DRC. What's the latest that we are hearing around that?
Yeah, even when you get the Western cables, you find these issues of sources, undisclosed secrets, sensitivity of the talks. Very sad when people have died in the DRC and you still have clandestine sources talking about this DRC peace agreement. Remember, we did say to us, this is going to be what I call the precursor before President signed. Now we have ministers who have been engaging. Drafters of this peace agreement are saying that they have to withdraw that aspect of saying that the Rwandan troops must pull out of the Eastern DRC, but gradually there will be phases also that they will deal with it. As you know, that Kigali also have said that there's an armed rebel group in the Eastern DRC also that is also having a threat to Rwanda. So there is this back-to-back. But looking at the draft that they will never tell us is this access to critical minerals of Congo, or is it to end the conflict? And this peace deal, will it hold when it's also in Washington, not even in Kinshasa, not even in Kigali, not even in Addis Ababa?
Yeah. Lastly, Sipho, take me to your historical archive. You want to open the chapter on the 27th of June, 1976. What happened?
It's almost 49 years, but as we are seeing the Soweto Uprising Month, I thought let's give the text and the context that 2 weeks after the Soweto revolution, one of the founding leaders of the nation, or who was the president actually of the Black People Convention, Tate Kenneth Raku Rashidi, who actually in 1975 was elected as a president, but 1976 he said that the revolution of 1976, and the media used the word the riots, I don't know whether people were rioting or were just rebelling against the system. So I've been playing away from the word riot and revolution. That revolution, it ushered a new era of political consciousness. And I think that's how it is important, the role that Rashid spoke about, the ideology of black consciousness, how it emerged through BPC and through the founder leaders of the South African Student Organization, SASO. And I think for our listeners, if they can look at the obituary that was written by our vivid listener, Tate Matata Sedu, on the 25th of October 2022, he then tells you further about this young intellectual who brought black consciousness to South Africa. Asante sana Thulasizwe leading a conversation, SAFM observing the Soweto uprising man.
Sipho, thank you as always. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update for this morning.
This week on FC Meets, former Morocco Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. Are you ready to save even more on brands you love at Dis-Chem? The more you buy, the more you save when you stock up on selected Unilever personal care brands such as Vaseline, Dove, Lux, Pond's, Radox and more. Get 15% off when you buy one product, 20% off when you buy two, and a massive 25% off when you buy three. T's and C's apply. Hurry, Unilever deals end 13 July, only at Dis-Chem. Better health starts here.
You are listening to The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
6:45 on this Friday. Let's bring you news coming out of the eastern part of our continent now, particularly in Kenya, where the country is reeling after the latest round of violent clashes between police and protesters left between 8 and 16 people dead and around 400 others injured. And I say between 8 and 16 because I've seen the varying reports that cite both figures. Activists and civil society groups had organized Wednesday's protests to mark the one-year anniversary of the deadly June 2024 anti-tax law demonstrations, during which police opened fire on protesters, killing at least 60 of them. Rights groups and civil society organizations have condemned the government's response, which included a media blackout that was later overturned by court order. So let's speak to Alex Mayore, who is Communications Director at Third Way Alliance and also a Kenyan Gen Z. So let's speak to Alex now. He has been involved in the protests since last year. Alex, good morning and thank you for your time. Let's start here. Tell us what Wednesday's protest was about and what it aimed to achieve in relation to the deadly protests that happened last year.
Thank you very much. Good morning, South Africa. So the protest was meant to commemorate. It was actually not a protest. We actually wanted to commemorate victims of last year. So the plan was for us to go to Parliament and lay flowers, but we realized the government was already treating it as a hostile situation. They blocked access to Parliament, and they planted guns within the protesters. They plant guns within the protesters so that the violence occurs, so that they can justify responding with force. That's what actually happened.
Yeah.
It is the government that brought violence, not the protesters.
Yeah. Say a bit more then about what you're saying, that the government planted goons within the people who were part of the procession that was intended to commemorate and lay flowers at Parliament. What do you mean when you say they planted goons? What was the result of that?
You see, the government wants to paint the Gen Z cause as criminals. They want to make us look as people who are into vandalism. They don't want to address actually the real issues that we are raising. For example, we actually asked the president from last year demands, we actually audited what has it done from the demands that we made last year. We actually told the government to reduce its advisors from 7 to actually remove them all, because you actually don't need advisors when you have people in your cabinet is advisors. But since then, they've added up to 20 more advisors. You ask me, why does the president need a legal advice on constitutional affairs when they steal the office of the Attorney General? So we are looking at this as a way to reward cronies. He's rewarding cronies using our taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
We also asked him to reduce the cost of running State House and the office of the president. They've added it by 600 million. Yet people are very poor. There's no food in the houses. There's no jobs. In Kenya, it's a big luxury for people to actually be able to eat 3 meals a day.
But say a bit more then about what then transpired. I'm interested in the bit where you talk about goons being planted among the procession. Is that the reason why the violence then broke out?
Yeah, I will say that is the reason why it happened, because when you look at other cities, there is a city called Mombasa in Kenya.
Yes.
There was not a single death. There was only tear gas shot. And you know why? Because there were no goons there. But in Nairobi and other regions of the country, the politicians planned goons and they asked them to orchestrate violence. For example, they sent them to ban old cars so that they can blame it on the Gen Zs, and then they can ask the police to shoot, to kill. In fact, yesterday morning, before people went to the streets, the Minister for Interior of Kenya, Mr. Kipchumba Murkomen, actually ordered the police to shoot to kill, which means this was premeditated. They are already sat down and planned and decided that today we are actually going to kill people. And another question is, why do they need to use live bullets? Why not use rubber bullets, and why not shoot somebody in the leg or the shoulder?
Yeah.
Why aim for killing? Because isn't it so ironic that on the day we went to commemorate the fellow Gen Zs that died, actually more Gen Zs died. There is a young lady I saw on the TV last night, very young. She's now a single mother. The husband has just died. She doesn't know what to do. And the government does not compensate these victims, even from the ones that died last year. They've not been compensated. I would say another issue that actually provoked youth to actually go to the streets, it was that previously, a few days before, there's a young man called Albert Ojwang who was taken from his village home in the rural and taken to the city of Nairobi, and he was killed inside a police station. He died in police custody, and that actually angered us.
Yeah, I remember that story. Lastly, then, let's talk about you mentioned that even as the commemoration was starting, it was treated as being hostile. You then mentioned the issue of the allegation that there were goons who were planted to instigate violence. And it leads me to the question about a lack of trust. What do these two bouts of protests, last year's one and this year's one, tell us about the state of governance and human rights in Kenya? Is this a moment of reckoning for citizens and for the William Ruto administration?
I would actually say this is a defining moment for Kenya, because finally there is a huge segment of the youth who previously were never attentive to politics or never interested with politics, but we are seeing the Gen Zs who are actually now waking up, are becoming cautious and realizing that the governance actually affects their life. Previously, we were just in the clubs, we were partying, we were just doing everything but except politics. But since last year, the political consciousness of the young people has arose, and the current people in power don't know what to do with it. It has hit them by surprise. In short, they don't want to face the reality. They know the issues we are raising. We are raising the issues of unemployment. We are raising the issues of inequality. In fact, in Kenya, you are not even given an opportunity to fail as a young person. They have captured the economy to a point that even an opportunity to try or to fail is not there. That's why the youth decided, actually, we have nothing to lose. Let us go to the street. Even before we went to the street, some youth had actually told their family, if I die, this is what I want to be done on my burial. So there is a state of hopelessness, but also it's a very beautiful moment in Kenya, I will say.
All right, Alex, I've got to thank you for your time. That's Alex Mayore there, who is Communications Director at Third Way Alliance and also a Kenyan Gen Z who has been involved in the protests since last year.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Fairly busy coming down the M1 through Midrand for a Friday. Friday normally a little bit lighter, but not this morning. No major obstruction, but just traffic backing up already between the old Joburg Road and the off-ramp to a roundabout sort of new road before you're out of that. Pretoria side, Linwood Road, roadworks between January Masiela and the N1 highway. Quite heavy backlogs both directions. Both directions at this time of morning must be pretty intense, the roadworks they're doing along that section of Linwood. And heavy pressure coming in from the south today. The N1 queuing up from Eldos up through Deepcliff Interchange to Uncle Charlie's, R59 under pressure to Michelle Avenue. N3 north up towards Heidelberg Road, passing Spraitview quite slow. N3 Elands up to Galuli's busy. Mike 1 Boyson's through to Empire. So pretty much fully loaded on those major routes coming from the southern side in towards Joburg. Durban M7 already queuing from Hans Detman up to St John's Avenue Bridge. Breakdown N2 northbound at Spaghetti Junction. Heavy coming through from the M7 up in past that vehicle and then into the roadworks up by the Westwood Mall area. Bluff Road closed between Doon Road and the M7. That's due to that large hole in the carriageway. That is a full closure. And Cape Town just north of the airport. Traffic lights down this morning. Robert Sobukwe, Stellenbosch Arterial, 35th Avenue. Queuing pressure on all approaches into that junction. The N7 also worth a mention. Heavier than normal. Jakes Kervale Drive coming up from the N2 passing Lunga up to Viking Way in the Epping area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
As the FIFA Club World Cup 2025 is gearing for its knockout stages, all 4 clubs that represented the African continent have crashed out of the tournament. The clubs like Mamelodi Sundowns, Al Ahly of Egypt, Esperance of Tunisia, and Morocco's Wydad Casablanca have all failed to emerge from the group stages and into the round of 16. But in many instances, this team's exit was not without some gallant and resilient performances that displayed continental football's growth and potential. And that's really been the constant narrative in reflecting on their performances. So let's bring in Nkululeko Nkewu, who is co-founder of Idiski Media, as well as a football broadcaster. Good morning to you, Nkululeko, and thank you for your time once again this morning. So this was not like the national teams, the World Cup between national teams, confined only to the talent that, bears allegiance to your country, that is a citizen of your country. This tournament featured clubs that are giants in their own right and in their own countries and the continent. So how did we end up with this outcome then, which some would say mirrors what happens even with the World Cup among nations?
Yeah, good morning to listeners. Good morning to your listeners as well. Well, there is a chasm between European nations with national teams and their clubs because they make the most money, they attract the most talent, the best coaches, the best players, the best physiotherapists, the best analysts go to where the money is, which is European football. I suppose the North Americans with their MLS and the South Americans as well, the Brazilians and the Argentinians. And then I suppose between us and Asia, we become the best of the rest. So that was expected from myself and everyone else who observes football, that we will probably have a puncher's chance of having maybe one team qualifying for the next round. So There's nothing surprising about it because there is a gap between teams. Even in our country, there is a gap between teams who are in the National First Division and the teams who are in the Betway Premiership, for example. So there is a difference between a student who's in grade 12 and one who is in grade 7. So there's differences to this, the finances and the quality of players and the quality of competition within a continent. So I suppose Mamelodi Sundowns were the best performers amongst the African teams.
Sure.
They won one match and they drew one match and they lost one match. In fact, interestingly, they actually performed just like Bafana Bafana performs on all 3 World Cups that Bafana Bafana have played, 98, 2002, 2010, 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss throughout, like all of those World Cup appearances. So it's not too bad. It's like if you're a Sundowns fan and you watched 3 matches, you were happy in one match, you were maybe neutral in one because you drew, and then you were unhappy with one because you lost. So that's not too bad. They just needed one goal. Sure.
There's something about the way that you're phrasing it that gives it some color in terms of
absolutely. I mean, you have to look in the bright side in that no one expected African teams to win. No one expects African teams to win a World Cup, for example, because there's a gap. There's a gap in finances and quality of players, quality of coaches, quality of analysts. That exists. So every time you go to war, you find out who's got the most ammunition, firepower, so that you don't get dragged into wars with bigger nations, for example. So in football, that rings true. Every now and then, of course, you will have an underdog winning 1 or 2 matches. That doesn't mean that you have improved or you are now part of the superpowers globally. So African teams didn't do well, but I expected them. The Club World Cup has always been playing in a different way, different version, lesser teams, and every single incarnation of it always had African teams not doing well, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 years in 15 years where you have African teams going to either the semi-final or the final. But we're not world beaters in Africa, and there are socio-economic reasons for that we don't get the best competition in and amongst ourselves. We don't get the best quality of players amongst ourselves, and that's a reasonable assessment of it. So I didn't expect any of us to go out there and win the Club World Cup. That's ignorant to think that we would have won the tournament.
Yeah. All right, Nkululeko, let's leave it there for this morning. That's Nkululeko Nkeu, co-founder of Itiski Media, also a football broadcaster. Let's go straight to N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, kidnapped Kamokhela Baukudi found alive and Rwanda and DRC to sign a peace deal in the US. Good morning. 19-year-old Kamokhela Baukudi, who was kidnapped in Bloemfontein earlier this month, has been found alive in Wepener in the Free State. The grade 11 learner from Marti du Plessis Special School was kidnapped while being driven home from school. Police spokesperson Mutansi Magele says after intensive investigation, Baukudi was safely located and rescued in the early hours of this morning. 5 men aged between 20 and 29 have been arrested. This brings the total number of arrests in the case to 6. They will appear in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court on Monday. DA spokesperson Willie Oukamp says it's time President Cyril Ramaphosa realizes that he does not govern alone anymore. His remarks followed what the DA calls the unjust firing of its member, Andrew Whitfield, as Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Oukamp says Ramaphosa is putting the Government of National Unity at risk by firing Whitfield. He further questioned the reasons behind this decision.
Has he been fired really for going to another country without permission? Or has he been fired because of what they are afraid that he might do in that portfolio? And that we don't have the answer on. That is not the point on the discussion. The president went so far to fire a deputy minister of one of his partners in this GNU. It's not how it works in the Government of National Unity. And I think it's high time that the president must realize that he's the president, but he does not govern alone anymore. And there should be more respect within the GNU with partners and how we are going about on this.
Meanwhile, Minister in the Presidency, Kumbutso Ntshabeni, says the President has the prerogative as head of state to appoint or remove ministers and deputy ministers.
The President exercises power in two forms. There's the power that he exercises collectively with his cabinet, and there's a power that he exercises alone as the President. The decision to appoint or to remove or to reshuffle ministers and deputy ministers, that's the sole prerogative of the President. He exercises that without consulting anyone, but that is his sole decision.
Police Crime Intelligence Head Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo is expected to appear at the Pretoria Magistrates Court today. Khumalo and other senior police officials were arrested at OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg yesterday. Lupang Alamu reports.
The NPA's Henry Mamotame confirmed the arrests to SABC News. He says Khumalo and other senior managers within the South African Police Service are expected to appear at the Pretoria Central Magistrate Court on Friday. However, he could not give more details about the possible charges the suspects will face and the circumstances relating to their arrests. But reports suggest this could be in connection with the alleged unlawful appointments.
And finally, the foreign ministers of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo are expected in Washington today for the signing of a peace agreement. The ministers will sign the agreement in the presence of the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. A statement from the U.S. State Department says technical teams from both countries initialed the proposed agreement on the 18th of this month that will include a number of provisions. As Show Bryce Peace reports, the agreement will likely offer some cautious optimism, but implementation and compliance would be key.
President Trump took to social media on June 20th, saying he was very happy to report that they had arranged a wonderful treaty between the DRC and Rwanda, describing the war in eastern Congo as one known for violent bloodshed and death, and a conflict that had gone on for decades. The agreement, brokered by the state of Qatar and the United States, includes provisions on the respect for territorial integrity and a prohibition of hostilities, disengagement, disarmament and conditional integration of non-state armed groups, the establishment of a joint security coordination mechanism, the facilitation of the return of refugees and internally displaced persons, humanitarian access, and a regional economic integration framework.
Recapping the top story, 19-year-old Kamokhela Baukudi was kidnapped in Bloemfontein earlier this month, has been found alive in Wepener in the Free State. The grade 11 learner from Marty du Plessis Special School was kidnapped while being driven home from school in Bloemfontein. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
With all the recent headlines, it's time for some good news. A 25-year-old man, Tyler, is smiling all the way to the bank. He switched to Outsurance and now saves a whopping 718 Rand a month on the insurance for his 2021 Ford Figo 1.5. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Cricket, Rassie van der Dussen to lead the Proteas in the T20 Tri-Series build-up. And we have soccer, Amakosi ready to launch Kaizer Chiefs Women's League side. We'll have the details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty busy for a Friday around the Gauteng Highway networks. We saw a busy Friday last Friday, seeing it again this morning, particularly if you're in from the south, the N3 queuing it straight for you going north to Heidelberg Road, R59 queuing north into Michelle Avenue, N1 queuing north through Diepkloof, the N3 queuing north from Elands up to Galulis, the Mike 1 queuing as well, Boyson through to Parktown, a lot of pressure that side. Even a barometer of how busy it is, the N1 south through Midrand looking fairly busy, traffic currently under pressure just down towards New Road, although that is starting to move through. Heavy pressure, N1 south coming out of Pretoria between Atterbury Road and Rigel Avenue. Looks like something's probably crashed on that run through this morning, and very heavy around some roadworks on the Linwood Road between the M1 Highway and January Masiela. Both sides of that section of Linwood Road are under early morning pressure. Durban, N2 North, sitting from the M7 through Westwood Mall, the M7 from Hans Detman over St John's Avenue Bridge, all backed up. And Cape Town, the top story there, no traffic lights. Robert Sobukwe, Stellenbosch Arterial and 35th Avenue, top of the airport area, delays on all approaches into that junction. And the N7, Jake Scoville Drive, queuing heavily through Langa up in towards Viking Way at Epping. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's coming up to 9 minutes after 7 on this Friday. It is great to be in your company. We're into the second hour of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. I've been receiving a fair amount of responses to what I said in Shona a bit earlier on in response to Melissa Puta telling us about the city of Joburg and their pledge to resurface some 85 kilometers over the coming months and giving a budget. I think it's 150 million rand. If you missed it, I said when I worked in Zimbabwe, I learned a bit of Shona. And if you are skeptical about the person delivering on their promise and undertaking, you say, Totenda Tawona. We will thank you when we see you delivering on that undertaking. We're not about to say, thank you, oh, yes, until we see you delivering. So Donald in Rustenburg says, good morning to Thulasizwe and the brilliant Morning Brief team. Today you remind me of back home, Totenda Tawona or Totenda Tsamwa Taswera Nebenzi. I've never heard that expression, by the way. Your command of Shona language is on another level. Then we've got another one coming through from Kelly, who's a truck driver in Europe, who says, hi Thulas, Totenda Tawona, you made me smile with those laughing emojis. Thank you for those responses. Then I want to read this one. It has to do with the Government of National Unity, and it comes from D. Mjali in Lady Grey in the Eastern Cape. D. Mjali says, the GNU is becoming shaky. The last 3 days, the behavior of ministers in that GNU is intolerable. Deputy Minister Whitfield has tested the president's powers and now is protected by his party, the DA. He has taken the trip overseas without authorization by the president. This is unethical. The DA has to deal or focus on its deployees and stop looking at the president's work. So that comes from D. Mjali, and that has to do with one of the stories we will cover within this half hour, and we'll be in conversation with Professor Dirk Kotze, who is a political analyst, and that's coming up in the next few minutes. Just, what the moment represents for the national governing coalition known as the Government of National Unity. As you'll know, the DA has given President Ramaphosa 48 hours. It's an ultimatum. They're not even shying away from calling it an ultimatum for him to fire ANC ministers that the DA says are implicated in corruption. Key among them, Ministers Thembi Simelane and Nobuhle Nkabane and Deputy Minister David Mahlobo. But they say if that doesn't happen, all bets are off. What exactly does that mean? We'll be in conversation with Professor Dirk Kotze in the next few minutes. And then we'll touch base and give you an update on the situation in the Western Cape. A cold front, windy conditions, heavy rainfalls leading to flooding in certain areas, including Khayelitsha. We'll touch on that as well. Give me a call. The number to dial is 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. And by the way, some good news coming through. You heard there from N. Musa in the bulletin talking about the process and the update in the search for Kamokhelo Baukudi, who had been kidnapped and had been missing for a number of weeks now in Bloemfontein, has been found alive. So that's really good news that's coming through from Bloemfontein. All right, let's waste no further time. Let's get the second hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief underway.
EFC is live this Thursday, after months of talk.
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
The middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here. At the main event of EFC, you've never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach and Sua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena, this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel, on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let me play those voice notes for you. There's a story that I flagged and highlighted that we will cover towards the end of the show. It has to do with a judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal that came out recently. And I think in my framing of it, I thought it raises interesting questions about the alignment that occurs sometimes between what you consider to be morally right and what is legally right. It has to do with a medical negligence case where a child was born with severe brain injury as a result of the negligence of the staff at a public hospital. But the court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, has basically decided that the child should not be awarded damages for pain and suffering, as well as the loss of amenities of life. They get the, other damages that have to do with losses suffered, etc. What they call pecuniary losses. Yeah, special damages. But these ones that are said to be general, they don't get. This child will not be awarded simply because they are not conscious and will never be aware of their pain and suffering, as well as they will never be aware that their quality of life is lesser because of this injury, and the court reasoning that it serves no purpose. There must always be a purpose between, general damages, pain and suffering and the likes, and the purpose of what will you do with that? How will it help to give this child this money? It was meant to be about 2 million rand in terms of the initial order, and the Supreme Court of Appeal saying that has to be taken off the table. So someone wants to weigh in on that aspect of medical negligence. I gave you that long preamble because I just assumed that some people perhaps didn't hear earlier on, and I want everyone to be on board with the conversation.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. You're speaking to Anonymous here from Cape Town. I just have one thing to say. That judge needs to be impeached. Really, man, it is sad, man. It is really sad. As if that child is not going to grow up knowing what happened to him or her. It's sad, man. That judge needs to be impeached. And where's the human rights in this? Why can they not come forward? No, that case must be appealed, man. Must be taken to the Constitutional Court. It is wrong. It's totally wrong.
Yeah. I've got to say that there are categories of damages that can be awarded, right? There's special damages. These are, usually the things that you can quantify, that we're going to incur. We have to buy a wheelchair for this child. We have to buy this special bed. We have to cover medical costs for the rest of their lives, etc., etc. That area is not in dispute. That's already been given. This has to do specifically with pain and suffering. To what extent is this child aware of their pain of their suffering, and then the other element being loss of amenities of life, quality of life, the ability to pick up a hobby, to have an adventure. That has been taken away because of this medical negligence. I'm just clarifying so that there's no confusion that this child, the mother and the family were not compensated for anything at all. Let me play this one. The ANC and the DA once again under the spotlight.
Morning, Thulasizwe. It's MVP here. I think the ANC shot themselves in the foot, and they're going to feel it in the coming months. Why would they wait for DA to actually tell them what to do in terms of the ministers that were implicated? ANC should have actually taken action long time ago, unless if these ministers have got skeletons, as the former minister Batabile Dlamini used to say, we all have skeletons in our closets.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. Yeah, but there is that reading that says now President Cyril Ramaphosa, if he acts against specifically the ministers that have been pinpointed by the DA, it's a bit of a difficult situation because it might look like he's acting only because the DA has given him this ultimatum. And I wonder if he will yield to the ultimatum. My sense is that he probably won't. But will there be negotiation and reaching out to see if there's a middle ground? I don't know. Let's wait and see what happens in the next few hours and next few days. By the way, I will be speaking to Andrew Whitfield after 7:30 here on the show. Let me take some of your calls. Kaya in Richards Bay, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about Floyd Shivambu?
Good morning, Thulas. Yes, my brother. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
It seems to be obvious that Floyd is starting a new political party. My deepest worry, how many political parties are we going to have? Are these all political parties really serving our interest? Can't we really at one point have one woman or one man with a strong commanding voice and united? Because they are further dividing us, dividing our voice, our vote, our power. With all these political parties, we have not achieved anything in 30 years.
Sure.
And if really we are further divided by this politically, where are we moving as the people, as the country?
Yeah.
You know, Thulas, we were conquered 1652 because we were divided. And we remain divided. There is nothing we're going to achieve with all these political parties. This is so unfortunate. I'm not blaming it to Floyd, but it applies upon all of us. We are failing to unite as the people.
Yeah. All right, Kaya, thank you for that interesting observation and point there being raised by Kaya in Richards Bay about the landscape, the political landscape. In fact, on that note, let me go straight to Temba in Mpumalanga. Good morning to you, Temba. You also want to talk about the ANC and the DA?
Yebo, ngibingelele Thulasizwe nabalaleli be-SA. Yeah, Thulasizwe, yabona umongameli njengoba qoshele Whitfield. Ngithi labe ngifuna khona. Ilabe sifuna ukubona khona le. Sifuna ukubona khona le 48 hours abayinika umongameli. Kahle kahle le GNU, akusi GNU to save the community of South Africa. I-GNU yokuthi kulwe i-ANC ne-DA. Each and everyone they want to show who ophethe ubani ibhoza la. Mina ayingihlaleli ayikho la isisiza khona yini. Ngoba i-ANC nayo inamaphutha ayo angaphakathi yele GNU. Nayo i-DA inama-mistake ayo ngaphakathi kwale GNU. Ndani sikuphi thina? Asivuleka amehlo singamavoters ukuthi senzani. Ayisishi indawo le GNU.
All right, Temba, thank you so much for that call. That's Temba in Mpumalanga there. Just in summary, Temba, they're talking about that this GNU is not serving the people and that this is what he wants to see. He wants to see what then happens at the end of the 48 hours because it seems this GNU, according to Temba, is all about contention between the DA and the ANC, each side trying to show the other side who's boss. That's really how I can sum up what Temba was saying there. All right, we'll take more of your calls and WhatsApp voice notes a bit later on.
It's a massive night of boxing this Friday in Thohoyandou at the Koroni Hotel and Casino. Current WBF Intercontinental Champion Akani Sambu from Malamulele trades punches with KZN's tough challenger Sabelo Tebekulu, while Mzansi's reigning queen Nosiakasu Dube defends a throne against Loveness Koka from Malawi. Limpopo's Humulani Stonefist Nechamuchetsi clashes with the rebel Musitsihwe from Botswana. Plus many more bouts. Who will survive? This is the Survival of the Fittest International Boxing Tournament. Catch the action this Friday, 27 June at 6 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Then on SABC 2 at 10:30 p.m. Proudly brought to you by Mama Rocks Boxing Promotions and SABC Sport.
From city streets to dirt trails, introducing the new Isuzu MU-X. Sleek enough for the city, tough enough for the mountains. With advanced all-terrain drive, 360-degree camera, and upgraded suspension to take on any journey. The new Isuzu MU-X, now including the new Onyx XT. It's an SUV with 4x4 capabilities, ready for anything. Experience the new Isuzu MU-X at your nearest dealership today.
Attention, grant beneficiaries. Couldn't switch your SASSA Gold card to the new Postbank Black card? No worries. Your SASSA Gold card is still valid and fully functional. You'll continue receiving your grants safely and securely. No need to change your card or switch banks. Use it as usual at ATMs, retailers, and spaza shops. Don't be misled by anyone claiming you must switch banks. Your money is safe with Postbank, a bank where banking can be completely free. Stay informed and stay safe. Postbank, your bank.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, we want to bring you an update on this story developing this morning about the search for Kamohelo Baukudi, the child who had been missing for a number of weeks now, believed to have been kidnapped in Bloemfontein. As you heard in the bulletins earlier on, Kamohelo has been found and found alive. But let's get a bit more detail from Brigadier Motansi Machele, who is the Free State Police spokesperson. Good morning to you, Brigadier, and thank you for your time. So, Kamohelo found in Wepener. Please lay out for us the circumstances under which he was found.
Good morning to yourself and to the listeners. Yes, we can confirm that this morning we embarked on an operation, intelligence-driven type of an operation, which led us to Wepener, township of Tribunal, where the three suspects were intercepted on the road in the company of Kamohelo, and that led us to a house in the same township where two other suspects were apprehended. 5 suspects were taken into custody, and we expect that they will appear in court soon.
So they had Kamohelo in a car and they were in transit with him at the time of the operation?
No, the 3 who were found on the road, they were walking.
Uh-huh. Oh, they were walking with him?
Yes, they were working with him.
So you're saying it was intelligence-driven. Was it assisted in a way, without asking you to reveal too much detail, Brigadier, but was it assisted in a way by the fact that you had some suspects in custody already?
Yes, indeed, we have 1 suspect already in custody, but I cannot say out of interrogation which started with him, this could have led us, but we relied more on our technical support and other aids, which we utilized to trace the whereabouts of Kamohelo.
What can you tell us about the condition of Kamohelo Baukudi? What condition is he in? Have you been able to interact with him? Has he said anything?
Yes, he has been reunited with the mother. He looks very tired. We'll understand the time he spent held at this house. And then he will definitely maybe have to go for medical checkup just to check his condition further in depth. But he's fine. He doesn't show any visible injuries, so we can say he's safe at home.
Yeah. And at this stage, what's your working theory, Brigadier, about what the motive was for this incident?
It's still early because, as I said, that these 5 suspects are still being interrogated. And out of what you'll find from them, then it will take somewhere. But we expect that we have the right people in custody now.
All right, great work. Thank you for that. That's Brigadier Motansi Magele, who is a Free State Police spokesperson, giving us an update there on the search for Kamohelo Baukudi, who has been found alive and rescued by police officers.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning to you. So Aiden Makram is taking a bit of a rest, and to the fore comes Rassie van der Dussen.
Yay!
Sport and its names.
And you did it so calmly. Yes, that's Rassie van der Dussen as well. He's calm, he's collected, and man, when he gets into the rhythm, you don't just bowl, you pray. And that's what we're looking for in our top order batter. He will stand in as captain for the rested Aiden Markram when South Africa play the host Zimbabwe and New Zealand in a 2020 Tri-Series starting in July. Now, Markram struck a second innings of 136 at Lord's this month to steer South Africa to a 5-wicket victory over Australia in the World Test Championship final. Batters Ryan Rickleton, Tristan Stubbs and David Miller, as well as all-round Marco Jansen, the quick Kagiso Rabada and the left-arm spinner Keshav Maharaj are also rested. Let's go to rugby. Barbarians head coach Robbie Deans has emphasised his side will be holding immense respect for the Springboks, but he won't be merely chasing shadows. The Springboks, they'll be led into action by Rassie Erasmus. That's on Saturday. They'll also feature several uncapped rookies, and they're determined not to slip up, especially against a side like the Barbarians, who are coached by a tactically astute former Wallaby leader. Let's go to soccer. Kaizer Chiefs have taken the bold steps towards establishing a women's football team. They've signed an agreement with Gauteng's leading women's football side, Home Sweepers. Now, here's this lady from Kaizer Chiefs, the director, Jessica Motaung. She talks about this team where Banyana captain Janine van Dijk started her footballing career.
Well, our approach is not one of compliance. It's one of involvement, participation, and making sure that women's football is well represented. We have been supporting a club in the league that many people don't know about for a few years now. We're excited about that, and we are making sure that the women's football in South Africa is going to change, and we'll make announcements in due course. But I'm excited about it. I've just come back from a women's leadership conference at CAF, which was quite inspiring, meeting women who are making a big difference on the continent and adding to the leadership of women's football in the game. It has been very exciting. But certainly from a Chiefs point of view, we will get stuck into the women's game.
Club World Cup action. Vinicius Jr. scored a goal and assisted another as Real Madrid had a 3-0 win over Salzburg and secured the Spanish powerhouse first place in the Club World Cup's Group H and a spot in the round of 16. Al Hilal booking a round of 16 showdown with English giants Manchester City after a 2-0 win over Pachuca. Manchester City turned out the style in Group G. They had a 5-2 win over Juventus. Jerry Mudoku delighted to contribute.
No, I'm very happy. We played well from the start. Nice goals, good victory. I'm happy that I could have contributed with this game. Look, we want to win every game. We don't calculate. We just want to win every game. And we're happy that we could end this group at top. The first 10 minutes was tough. And then when the rain came, honestly, it helped us a lot. So I'm thankful for the rain.
And finally, golf. Kevin Roy and South Africa's Ulrich Potgieter each shot a 10 under 62 to break the Rocket Classic record and share the first round lead. We'll be back leading with sports stories top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, says the ongoing violence, poverty and unemployment in the country has deprived the youth from enjoying the fruits of democracy. Pandor was speaking at the Nelson Mandela Youth Month Dialogue. 19-year-old Kamohelo Baukudi, who was kidnapped in Bloemfontein earlier this month, has been found alive in Wepener in the Free State. The grade 11 learner from Marti du Plessis University Special School was kidnapped while being driven home from school. And Mexico's lower house of Congress has approved legislation that bans entertainment events involving dolphins or other mammals. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Pretoria really struggling along this morning for a Friday especially. Two crash scenes on the N1, one going north before Garsfontein. That's a heavy queue right back through the R21. And then if you're coming southbound, there's been a crash before Rigel. So two separate collisions, both sides of the highway, and the highway under enormous pressure both ways. Also just off the highway, but staying in the capital city, roadworks on Linwood Road between the N1 highway and January Maciella, and that's quite heavily backed both directions as well. That will surprise you just how heavy that traffic is. Coming in from the southern side of Joburg, a crash on the R59 northbound at Michelle Avenue. Heavy backlogs coming through from Swartkoppies Road. Also crash on the N3 north at Elands Interchange. In fact, there are two queues there. One at Spruitview, which is quite heavy up to Heidelberg Road, and then another slowdown into that crash at the Elands Interchange side. The N1 between Malabongwe and Rivonia looking quite slow. And the R21 is clear this morning between Clayville and Tembisa. I think some of those roadworks may have been lifted late yesterday. Durban, N2 North, still heavy from the M7 up through Westwood Mall. There's a breakdown on the opposite side, southbound, going into Spaghetti Junction. So that's heavy as you run down from the Umgena Road side. Queuing up on the N2 North, there's an issue there just after the Kumashu Highway towards Gateway. So if you're on your way to the airport, that's two big queues on the N2 North to work through this morning. And Cape Town, traffic lights out. Robert Sobukwe, Stellenbosch Arterial, 35th Avenue's all sorts of congestion at the top end of the airport there, and a crash on the N7 South after Malabongwe Drive opposite Dunoon, holding traffic heading down towards Battercliff Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
All right, Ndauling is back with more updates for you. Ndauling, let's start with the property sector. Tell me about Growth Point and how they appear to be more positive about their prospects.
That's right, Silas. Now, the co-owner of V&A Waterfront raised its full-year earnings guidance for the second time this year, now expecting growth in distributable income of 2 to 3%, an improvement from its initial guidance of a decrease in income of 2 to 5%, and a previous update to growth of 1 to 3%. Now, the company says the improved guidance is pegged on strengthening property fundamentals in South Africa and interest rate cuts, but the benefits have been partially offset by lower offshore income resulting from the sale of Capital and Regional in the UK. Zooming in on the update, at the halfway stage, Growth Point's distributable income per share grew 3.9%, exceeding initial expectations. The company's local portfolio has also shown improvement, with vacancies decreasing from 8.7% to 8.4%.
You know how I always say to you, there are companies whose core business I'm not really familiar with. This one is not one of those. Hyprop. And that's because I'm a father of 3 daughters, and they drag me to malls kicking and screaming.
Yes.
So I know exactly who Hyprop are. Tell me about them and them looking for opportunities of growth in Eastern Europe.
And I was also about to say it's all in the name, Hyprop.
Yeah, well, it doesn't always come naturally to me. You know how this thing goes. It's too early in the morning.
Fair. I'll give you that. Now, the co-owner of Canal Walk is exploring expansion opportunities in Eastern Europe, confirming that it's still vying for rival Mass. Now, Mass is a real estate developer with assets in Romania and Poland, and Hyprop made a bid with 808 million rands for Mass, saying those assets would strengthen its footprint in the region, complementing its existing operations in Croatia, Bulgaria, and North Macedonia. The deal is subject to certain conditions, including approval from Hyprop's shareholders and clarity on agreements with PKI, a private real estate developer that has a stake in Mass and has also submitted a bid for Mass's operations. Now, despite a potential bidding war brewing, Hyprop says it remains committed to pursuing the transaction in a way that delivers the best possible value for its shareholders.
You know, this conversation, Dowling, has got me thinking, and I want to put this out there. There's a gap in the market for the likes of Hyprop and Growth Point and all the others, if they're listening. For people like me, who, if I could help it, I would not set foot in a mall. So community shopping centers where, you know, I just park here and the shop I want is just there, go straight to that shop and leave. This business of going in and the shop is buried somewhere in the bowels of... But you
know, there are some of these property players that own the smaller
we need
shopping.
More. We need more of
we
those.
Need more.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, lastly, Dowling, how are the markets looking at this hour?
Kicking things off in Asia, markets mixed as investors eye the looming tariff deadline, sending stocks in China in the red. But over in Japan, the Nikkei hitting a 6-month high this morning. Then in Wall Street, futures are in positive territory. Traders shrugging off yesterday's GDP print and eyeing the Fed's preferred inflation print, that being PCE, which will be released later today. Sentiment also upbeat on the local front, with the JSE All Share up close to 0.7% in yesterday's session. The rand, however, on the back foot this morning. It's sitting at 17.86 to the dollar.
All right, Dowling, thank you for that. We'll catch up with you in the third hour of the show. Dowling will have one more update for you just after 8:30.
What if you open up more? Open up to learning and experiencing more of Mzansi and abroad? What if you open up culture and explore the extraordinary, from music to drama and the latest fashion? What if you open up your wild side, discover a world of skyscraping cities and brown sugar beaches? What if you open up your kitchen and immerse yourself in cuisines from all corners of the world? What if you open up your voice with all eyes on you without being seen? What if you open up your morning to lekker conversations and world-class entertainment? What if you open up more?
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
Tensions in the national governing coalition known as the Government of National Unity have once again from 0 to 100 real fast. President Cyril Ramaphosa pulling the trigger yesterday and firing Trade and Industry Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield of the DA. Ramaphosa gave no reasons for his decision, citing only the provisions of the Constitution that empower him to hire and fire members of the National Executive. That decision has enraged the DA, which has now given Ramaphosa a 48-hour ultimatum to fire ANC ministers that the party says are implicated in corruption. Key amongst them are Ministers Thulasizwe Simelane, Nobuhle Nkabane and Deputy Minister David Mahlobo. Andrew Whitfield, a DA Member of Parliament and former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, joins us now to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, Andrew, and thank you for your time. Do you know why you were fired?
Well, I can only speculate. I mean, I think there's been a lot of speculation in the absence of a clear and stated reason from the presidency. I received a letter on Wednesday, and that letter didn't provide any explanation, but thanked me for my service and reiterated the president's legal prerogative to appoint and obviously disappoint in this case. But, one of the reasons may very well be that I traveled to the United States earlier this year. I did request permission from the president. After 10 days, I had not received a response, and I undertook to go, obviously at risk, but I undertook to go because my party had asked me to go. And I think this is an interesting new dynamic for the government because it's a coalition, and it's not just one party that is operating. I account to obviously the president in one respect, but also to my party in another. And I felt that 10 days was a more than reasonable period of time to wait for a response which never came and still has never arrived.
So are you saying that in the letter that the president sent to you dismissing you from the national executive, nowhere does he cite a reason, only reiterates the authority and power of decision-making that he has?
That is correct.
In terms of that trip to the United States, it was on DA business. Do you now regret having undertaken it without the express approval of the president?
Well, I mean, I think that I was aware of the risk at the time and, obviously conflicted between reporting to two masters, one being the president and the other being, the DA. And looking back, I've acknowledged in writing to the president, in fact, Thulasizwe, I've written to the president to acknowledge the position that I placed him in, and I even apologized, which is, I'm not sure, how many people would go about doing it that way. But anyway, I did do that. I never received a response to that. And over the last 4 months, I think this is important, it's been 4 months since that trip. And at no stage during that trip was I asked to provide reasons, a report, was I summoned to a meeting, disciplined, asked to make a public apology, had my salary docked, whatever other means. In the context of the GNU and the stability of the Republic, I would have thought that there would have been other ways to deal with this. But, that's not the case. The president waited 4 months and has now made this decision, which I believe is disproportionate, and I think it could have been resolved.
This non-response that you say has come through from the president. The president has been the treatment of initially your request to undertake the trip and subsequently your letter explaining and apologizing to him. Does it point to an undercurrent that perhaps has been at play for quite some time? Were there any tensions between you and the president that perhaps, were building up over the duration of your service within the national executive?
Well, I mean, our paths never really crossed. I mean, I worked diligently within the department together with the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition, where I did a lot of work in, asking tough questions maybe in certain respects. But I think that, the president has made a decision. The president must explain that decision in my view. Yeah. I think I did acknowledge, and I have said that on this interview, I did acknowledge that this was an obviously, looking back, a situation that I put the president in, which is regrettable. But to not respond to an apology or to even try to mediate or resolve this matter. The president should also, and I think that the entire new environment in which we operate in, we need to take into consideration. A president has a legal prerogative. I'm not disputing that. He can appoint and he can fire whoever he wants. But he didn't appoint whoever he wants. He appointed members to the executive after asking political parties to nominate people. And therefore, the president, in doing so, acknowledged that there is, as much as he has a legal prerogative, he has a political imperative to consult and engage. And I think that principle, it would be rational to presume that principle would apply both in the appointment and the disappointment phase in this environment. Instead, now he leans purely on the legal reasoning, ignoring the political imperative and the consequences which we're now seeing play out.
Lastly, Andrew, what will you say if someone says the president had no choice but to act in this way against you? We have the president, of course, of former President Thabo Mbeki dismissing Nozizwe Madlala Routledge from the cabinet as a result of a trip that she had undertaken to Spain. That it comes down to an issue of discipline and cohesion. If you're a leader, you want the people that you are leading to, show respect for your leadership and to maintain that cohesion and discipline. Had you gotten away with this, someone else could, all bets were off, to use an expression that the DA is using right now. All bets were off what the next minister and the next minister was going to do.
Well, that's true. Equally, what is true is that the president has now created an environment in which I think that members of the GNU are anxious that they won't be consulted and that he can simply just remove any member of a political party from the executive. I think that's also true. I do believe that there were a number of incidents where members of the executive may have requested permission and not received approval, or in fact didn't even ask for permission and traveled. So, I think that this is going to be something that the public takes a great interest in, to see whether there's been consistency and whether it is considered to be disproportionate or proportionate in the context in which we're operating. I'm not disputing the president's legal prerogative. What I am challenging is in the context in which we operate and the importance of the stability of the republic, that the political consultation process, and this is from a president who talks about national dialogues, well, perhaps there should be more of an internal dialogue on issues of this nature.
So you're a senior leader within the Democratic Alliance. The party has said if the president doesn't respond by actually firing other ministers that they say are errant within the government, quote unquote, all bets are off. I know that you can't speak for the DA what they will do, but what is your take on how the party should navigate that content of, quote unquote, all bets are off? What should happen?
Well, I think that the party's taken a responsible route and not taken a rash decision. It could have just simply reacted in a reflex way. And I think that we need to take this time over the next 48 hours to consider all of the options available. There isn't just a singular option available. And hopefully a dialogue will emerge and a conversation will take place and consensus will be achieved. But, I can't prescribe what the way forward should be. Based on the next 48 hours, the federal executive of the DA will convene to discuss the various options it has at its disposal. I want to just reassure you and your listeners that as a member of parliament, as a senior leader of the party, I'm not motivated by position. There's a greater purpose here. We need to serve the people of this country at a time when they need us the most.
All right.
And I have a lot of other ways to exercise my skills and my effort and my energy in the public service of South Africa, and I'm happy to continue doing that.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. Andrew Whitfield, DA Member of Parliament and also former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. Listening to that is one of our listeners, Thabiso in Polokwane. Good morning to you, Thabiso. Quick, short and sharp for me. Weigh in on this.
Good morning, Thulas. Thulas, going to the United States take a bit of time. So now for the deputy minister to say that he applied to the president in 10 days and then expected a quick response from the president that he must go and not go, I think that's unfair for the president to be able to answer for now. But because the president has taken a decision, well, of course, I agree with you. Withdraw lessons from previous. You know that Mandela took the very same decision when the late Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and you'd remember that was the most difficult decision that Mandela would have taken. And Thabo Mbeki also in 2007, at the height of his own political, misfortunes in the organization, he had to even take that particular decision. It happened. Yeah. Now, at the height of the GNU, you have this particular decision that had to be taken by the president. I can assure you, if the DA thinks that the government of national unity is co-governing, and I think there's something else here, it therefore then means that any minister can just do whatever he wishes if he's supported by the party, and I think that cannot be allowed.
All right.
Those are some of the things that need to be able to be looked at and must not be condoned in any way, in any manner.
All right, Thabiso, thank you for that. That's Thabiso in Polokwane weighing in on that situation around Andrew Whitfield. We'll take more of your calls, WhatsApp, voice notes, and other messages a bit later on.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a very busy Friday in Capital City. Pretoria motorists take note. Crashes on the N1 highway both ways this morning. Going southbound, the Great Waiter traffic, a crash before Rigel Avenue. That's a queue all the way back to the N4 Emelefleni Highway. And then northbound, just as bad, if not worse. A collision before Garsfontein. And that's backlogging traffic all the way back down to Buerta Avenue. Jam-packed both ways. Do try and avoid it or travel later. Also, you're going to be asked to sit in traffic again. N14 heading into the Brakfontein interchange on your way to Pretoria. Pretoria. Still pressure coming in from the south, particularly on the R59, with a crash at Michelle Avenue. Traffic backlogging through Swartkoppies Road and back towards the Klip River Junction. Across the Durban this morning, the N2 jam-packed both ways, northbound from the M7 up through the works at Westwood Mall, southbound from Umgena Road down to the usual breakdown at Spaghetti Junction, so heavy both ways there. Also another breakdown on the N2 north before you get to Gateway, so it's quite a big backlog getting up from Commercial Highway, passing that one through the roadworks and the construction area. Looking okay at Cliffdale and looking okay coming in and out of Pietermaritzburg this morning. Cape Town crash, Marine Drive inbound at Milner Road. That's a heavy queue from Pardon Island, hugging the coast in towards Pardon, or from Milnerton in towards Pardon Island. Lights are out Robert Sobukwe and Stellenbosch Arterial. They might also be off at Robert Sobukwe and Delaray. There's some real big backlogging of traffic in Paro Industrial and the Modderdam area this morning. And a collision on Van Riebeeck Road at the R300, causing delays out of Kales River and holding up R300 north from the Delft side, wanting to off-ramp at that Van Riebeeck off-ramp. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Got a Standard Bank business account and self-service banking? You could win up to 5,000 Rand cash every day this week in the Standard Bank self-service quiz. SMS Standard Bank self-service to 45787 for a chance to be selected. Answer 2 easy questions about Standard Bank self-service banking to be a winner. Tune in every day this week on the Midday Link-Up to see if it's you. Standard Bank. It can be. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a serum for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
It's coming up to 5 minutes to 8. As Environment Month concludes, the South African Human Rights Commission has issued a policy brief spotlighting one of the nation's most urgent crises, the systemic sabotage of water infrastructure by criminal syndicates known as water mafias. With access to clean water being a constitutional right, the SAHRC warns that deliberate attacks on water systems not only threaten human rights but also national stability. Let's hear more about this policy brief from Commissioner Henk Boshoff from the South African Human Rights Commission. Good morning to you, Commissioner, and thank you for your time. Just in summary, in terms of what you observe in this policy brief, how pervasive and widespread is this phenomenon of deliberate sabotage of water infrastructure?
Well, good morning to you, Thulas, and thank you for the invitation. Well, over the last 12 months or so, the Human Rights Commission had engagements with municipalities in all 9 provinces in the country. We arranged sessions with municipalities, and the purpose of these engagements was basically to try and understand what were the root causes for the inadequate service delivery in municipalities. So it was inquisitorial, the engagements, and what we heard from, I would say, approximately 90% of the municipalities was that there was the vandalism, theft, and then obviously sabotage of municipal infrastructure in almost all our municipalities was prevalent. And many of the municipalities confirmed the presence of the so-called water mafias, the construction mafias in all these municipalities. And when I recently had discussions with mayors of municipalities, they also confirmed that, the presence of the water mafias in municipalities. Now, we know that the only reason for the appointment of these so-called service providers, the so-called water mafias in municipalities, is for them to benefit financially.
Yeah.
They get appointed to provide water tankers, for example, and then there's a reluctance on the side of municipal officials to appoint staff members or to fill vacant positions in municipalities who can actually perform these services. And as I've already said, it is just for business people, your so-called mafias, to benefit.
So, Commissioner, you then recommend responses, and some of them I find really interesting. For instance, I didn't know that water infrastructure is not classified as critical infrastructure for the purposes of that act. I don't know to what extent what the position is. Clarify for me the legal policy and policing interventions that you are recommending.
Yeah. Well, we are recommending that the Minister of Police should add activities targeting water services infrastructure to the policing priorities and needs in the national policing policy. And that policy should be finalized and adopted as soon as possible. We have also recommended to the Office of the President that he should proclaim and promulgate the remainder of the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. That has not been promulgated and proclaimed as yet. And once that has happened, we are recommending that the minister responsible for the implementation of this specific act should then declare all water services infrastructure as critical infrastructure in terms of the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, to deal with the sabotage of water services infrastructure, which is obviously a serious challenge at the moment.
Yeah, all right. I've got to thank you for your time and insights, Commissioner. Interesting work that is being done there by the South African Human Rights Commission. That's Commissioner Henk Boshoff, just sharing some of the insights that they gleaned from their engagements with municipalities about the prevalence and, pervasiveness of the activities of the so-called water mafias. You heard there in clarity from Commissioner Boshoff just how it all works out and what interventions they are calling for. It's 8 a.m. and Musa is standing by with your latest news update.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, Pando highlights challenges depriving the youth and kidnapped Kamogelo Baukudi found alive. Good morning. Chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Dr. Naledi Pando, says the ongoing violence, poverty and unemployment in the country has deprived the youth of enjoying the fruits of democracy. Pando was speaking at the Nelson Mandela Youth Month Dialogue held in Houghton in Johannesburg. The dialogue was held to discuss what freedom means for young people and to offer them a platform. Pando says she's skeptical that young South Africans are fully enjoying their youth.
There's so many difficulties. There's violence, there's poverty, there's inequality, there's lack of opportunity, there's no livelihood in many families. So young people can't be enjoying that. And this is why it is so urgent for us to look at growth sectors and how we can invest in them, not just as government, but the private sector as well. It's urgently necessary that we do something to resolve these problems.
19-year-old Kamogela Baukudi, who was kidnapped in Bloemfontein earlier this month, has been found alive in Wippenaar in the Free State. The grade 11 learner from Martie du Plessis Special School was kidnapped while being driven home from school. Police spokesperson Mutansi Magele says after intensive investigation, Baukudi was safely located and rescued in the early hours of this morning. 5 men aged between 20 and 29 have been arrested. This brings the total number of arrests in the case to 6. They will appear in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court on Monday. DA spokesperson Willie Oukamp says it's time President Cyril Ramaphosa realizes that he does not govern alone anymore. His remarks followed what the DA calls the unjust firing of its member, Andrew Whitfield, as Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Oukamp says Ramaphosa is putting the government of national unity at risk by firing Whitfield. He further questioned the reasons behind this decision.
Has he been fired really for going to another country without permission? Or has he been fired because of what they are afraid that he might do in that portfolio? And that we don't have the answer on. That is not the point on the discussion. The president went so far to fire a deputy minister of one of his partners in this GNU. It's not how it works in the government of national unity. And I think it's high time that the president must realize that he's the president, but he does not govern alone anymore. And there should be more respect within the GNU with partners and how we are going about on this.
Meanwhile, Minister in the Presidency, Kumbutso Ntshavheni, says the President has the prerogative as head of state to appoint or remove ministers and deputy ministers.
The President exercises power in 2 forms. There's the power that he exercises collectively with his cabinet, and there's a power that he exercises alone as the President. The decision to appoint or to remove or to reshuffle ministers and deputy ministers, that's the sole prerogative of the President. He exercises that without consulting anyone, but that is his sole decision.
And finally, Mexico's lower house of Congress has approved legislation that bans entertainment events involving dolphins or other mammals, such as orcas and sea lions. Marine mammals will only be allowed to remain in captivity for the purpose of research or reproduction. The BBC's Leonardo Rocha reports.
Dolphin shows where tourists pay to swim and take pictures with the animals are a popular attraction in Mexican resorts such as Cancun and Cozumel. But for decades, campaign groups have denounced the cruelty behind the profitable industry. They say the animals suffer because of chemicals in the swimming pools and often go blind. In a rare show of unity in Mexican politics, the Wildlife Reform Bill won unanimous support in the Chamber of Deputies. It had already passed the Senate and will now be signed into law by President Claudia Sheinbaum.
Recapping the top story, chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, says the ongoing violence, poverty and unemployment in the country has deprived the youth of enjoying the fruits of democracy. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
You won't hear this in the news headlines, but it's worth talking about. Lorette, a 61-year-old woman, is a real Outsurance client who switched and now saves a newsworthy 725 Rand a month on her 2024 BMW X1. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. You always get something out. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's cricket action, and we're looking ahead to the Proteas with coach Shukri Conrad. He's backing the all-rounder Vian Mulder at the number 3 spot for the Zimbabwe Test, and it's the Springboks in action against the Barbarians. We'll bring you all the action with Jean-Luc Dupree, thrilled to be back in the Bok Mix. Details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Traffic headlines this Friday. Very heavy on the M1 in Pretoria. Crash scenes both ways around Rigel Avenue. Northbound, the collision just after Rigel towards Castleffontein. Big delays from the Botha Avenue side, and southbound a crash before Rigel, pushing a queue right back as far as the N4. Emma Fenny join. Just off the highway, Linwood Road, between the N1 and Jenner and Masiella. Some roadworks going on there, causing some heavy delays as well. Joburg bound, coming in off the Vaal, a crash on the R59 at Michelle Avenue. That's a heavy pushback right through Swakoppies towards Clipper River Drive territory. Durban's N2 jam-packed both ways into Spaghetti Junction. Northbound it's the roadwork, southbound it's the usual broken down vehicle. And Cape Town, two big lights out this morning. Robert Sebukwe at Stellenbosch Arterial and Robert Sebukwe in Delaray. There's a whole pile of traffic in that Motterdam side of Cape Town. R300 North heavy up towards the Van Riebeeck exit, and a crash on Marine Drive at Milner Road, causing delays from Milnerton into Pardon Islands. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 8. It's great to be in your company on this Friday. We're into the third hour of the Morning Brief. Something unexpected has happened. You know, I've healed, I've moved on from the Oreo. I've healed, I've moved on. But Vusi Lushaba in Durban wants to take me. No. Let's forgive Zion the missing Oreo and the missing cookie. No. Vusi, no. We are not going to put out a podcast about the missing Oreo. Because you're saying you want to know how the story ends, how the cookie crumbles. No, it's fine. Let's leave it. Zai enjoyed the cookie. Let's leave it there. And it was put to good use a few days ago, the cookie that went missing in the studio. But thank you for that message. Let me just read some of the messages that have to do, and if there's the response is overwhelming. So what we will do is really clear the decks in a way and allow you to vent and let it out and just share your perspectives on the various issues that we have covered this morning. A lot of you responding to my conversation with Andrew Whitfield, the former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, but also DAMP. We had a conversation with him just in the last 10 or so minutes of the last hour. Someone here says, now I understand why Ramaphosa fired this DA minister. You can't serve two masters. The minister should have known that once appointed a minister, the president is your boss. And that has to do with what Andrew Whitfield was saying in our conversation, that he took the decision to go to the United States on commission by the DA, despite not having received express authorization by the president, because, he was faced between a choice of serving what the party wanted him to do and what the prerogative of the president is, and that requirement that the president needs to approve your overseas trip, and basically saying that after 10 days of not hearing from the president, he basically thought reasonable time had been given, and therefore let me make this choice and take a risk, and that risk has not worked out well in terms of that relationship, and that's why we find ourselves here. So you can weigh in on this and any other conversations that we are having this morning, and I did tell you that a bit later on we'll be talking about that judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal that has to do with medical negligence and whether or not a person who is deemed to be unconscious and in a permanent vegetative state is the expression that is used, is entitled to a portion of damages that has to do specifically with pain and suffering, as well as the loss of amenities of life that has to do with the fact that they will never enjoy the quality of life that they would have enjoyed had they not suffered this permanent disability as a result of the negligence of medical staff. So that's coming up at about 8:45, just before we wrap up the show. You can weigh in on these and other matters. The number to dial, 086 000 2032. send me a WhatsApp voice note on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief has already started, as my good friend Victor Khomiaswane would want me to say.
Got a Standard Bank business account and self-service banking? You could win up to 5,000 Rand cash every day this week in the Standard Bank self-service quiz. SMS Standard Bank self-service to 45787 for a chance to be selected. Answer 2 easy questions about Standard Bank self-service banking to be a winner. Tune in every day this week on the Midday Link-Up to see if it's you. Standard Bank. It can be. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
It's a massive night of boxing this Friday in Thohoyandou at the Koroni Hotel and Casino. Current WBF Intercontinental Champion Akani Sambu from Malamulele trades punches with KZN's tough challenger Sabelo Tebekulu, while Mzansi's reigning queen Nosiakaso Dube defends a throne against Loveness Koka from Malawi. Limpopo's Kumulani Stonefist Nechamuchenzi clashes with the rebel Musitsihwe from Botswana. Plus many more bouts. Who will survive? This is the Survival of the Fittest International Boxing Tournament. Catch the action this Friday, 27 June at 6 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Then on SABC 2 at 10:30 p.m. Proudly brought to you by Mama Rocks Boxing Promotions and SABC Sport.
What if you open your night to culture? Try new things and make space for new voices, new stories, and new perspectives. Open up your Saturday night with world-class entertainment, reality TV, and drama from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
The fuse is lit. Let the conversation explode. Let me play 1 or 2 voice notes before I get to the calls. One of them has to do with the performance of African teams in the FIFA Club World Cup that is underway in the United States.
Good morning, Thulas and your team. This is Sakile Tsugwin from Kontrabia Lengan. You know, Thulas, the standard of African football is yet to match that of Europe. And that is why African teams have prematurely been eliminated from the Club World Cup. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was interesting to see. I keep having this little regret around Mamelodi Sundowns. Just the 1 or 2 mistakes that happened in their game against Borussia Dortmund. And I suppose we'd be talking a different conversation this morning had that game gone differently. On that day, they were world class, were Mamelodi Sundowns, no doubt about it. They were equal to the task, just that they had a bad day in the office, really. Someone wants to reflect on the Freedom Charter, whose 70th anniversary was marked yesterday.
Good morning to the SAFM listeners. As we celebrate 70 years of the Freedom Charter, which later gave birth to the Constitution of South Africa, I think we have progressed with many of the aspects like a right to vote, a right to the freedom of speech, etc. However, we have not dived deep into the access to drinkable water for all. I think there's many things that can be explored. However, I don't see enough appetite to resolve this issue. Sekwanele, Pretoria.
Sekwanele, thank you for that. And I suppose it's that whole concept of quote-unquote progressive realization within available means, right? That some of these socio-economic rights in the Constitution were never going to be achieved overnight. So it was about, they call it progressive realization within available means. As long as government can show that we are deploying all available means and towards the progressive realization, then, But I agree with you. The Freedom Charter laying the path that later on laid the framework for our constitutional democracy, including the provisions that you are talking to. Let me go straight to the calls. Back to back, I'd like to do it. I don't want to be a big part of the conversation. Let you debate it among yourselves. So let me start with Les in the Western Cape. Good morning to you, Les. You are talking to me about Andrew Whitfield. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Thulas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
the firing of the Andrew Whitfield is very unfair.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, I can see that the egocentric government of the ANC under Ramaphosa.
Mm-hmm.
Why I'm saying the egocentric government of the ANC under Ramaphosa? I see Ramaphosa as a president here in South Africa who claims himself as a liberal democracy president here in South Africa. I see only Ramaphosa. He wants to achieve his own goals, not to achieve the goals of the South Africans. Reason why for these things he can see that he only fire people who are against his own goals.
Mm-hmm.
This is John Flope, Esma Khashure, and the Linda Sisulu and Nkosazana Zuma. They were going to be removed just because they didn't support the loose and they were against Ramaphosa. And in this case, if I can see, the DA is acting as a security here in South Africa against Ramaphosa for vote of no confidence, because if DA can remove from the GNU, and then the EFF and the MK can come to the GNU, therefore Ramaphosa is not safe just because he can be removed as a vote of no confidence in this case.
Let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for that. That's Les in the Western Cape. Peggy in Mpumalanga. Good morning. Please go ahead.
Very good morning to us. Brief and short. The kudos to the president. He's got a constitutional duty that the DA does not separate from the political duty and the constitutional duty to fire and to hire. The president, I believe that he acted very well. But I would say that the DA was supposed to write to the president as a political party earlier in time. And secondly, the deputy minister, together with the DA, they were supposed to ensure that before his leaving, they make a follow-up to the president to say that because we have written a letter with no response, what really now would be the way forward, because we've got a duty that needs to be taken care of with the United States.
I hear you.
That will be my submission.
All right, Peggy. That makes sense to me. Thanks. That's Peggy in Bombela. Straight to Linda in Boksburg. Good morning. Also on the same issue.
Good morning to Thulasizwe.
Please go ahead.
The issue around Andrew Whitfield demonstrates clearly that there was never a government of national unity, nor there is a government of national unity, except that we have a forced or grudge coalition, which basically shows that whatever is happening between the so-called partners in this coalition, it's a mere statement where it demonstrates the levels of hypocrisy that have never been seen before. There is no need for what has happened. Completely no need. I mean, I don't support the DA. I don't think I'll ever be in that position in any case. But how many people are in that government who have done so much misdemeanor that they don't deserve even to have a look at government? I don't know what.
Wow. Linda, thank you for that.
Completely hypocrisy.
Yeah, Linda in Boksburg, and that's exactly the point that the DA is making. Let's hear what Zamani in Potchefstroom has to say about this issue. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Simelane. How are you?
Very well. Please go ahead.
Okay, I want to weigh in on this issue of this Mr. Whitfield of the DA.
Yeah.
What this guy or the DA has done by sending this guy to the USA to do, I don't know, whatever they send him to do there, is undermining the country's democratic principles. And it amounts to gross insubordination. They are showing that this DA, they are undermining, firstly, the minister who is delegated for that purpose of trade and industry, who is Mr. Fatstow. And they are also undermining Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, because they are seeing that this Trump administration does not recognize the black leadership that is running this country. So they did it deliberately. They were testing waters. In fact, I believe they many things that this guy has gone to the USA to discuss. That's why Ramaphosa has fired this guy without any warning or anything.
Gotcha.
So
Zamani,
there's more to this thing than what has happened.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Mr. Simelane.
Thank you, Zamani. That's Zamani in Potchefstroom. Let me move on to Mfundo in Cape Town. Good morning to you, Mfundo. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Thulasizwe.
Yeah.
Yes. First of all, DA and Ramaphosa, we need to, as South Africans, we need to be alert of not having a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. Ministers report to the president and not to the political parties. Now, if DA felt important that Andrew Whitfield needs to go and represent, actually needs to be a deputy minister, they should have replaced Andrew Whitfield and put someone else in his position if his position is so critical to the DA. That's the first point. The second point, Ramaphosa, and actually DA needs not to dictate what Ramaphosa needs to do. You release someone to be in the presidency. I'm not defending ANC.
Yeah.
Similar action that Ramaphosa needs to take against ministers of the ANC. He needs not to report to the political party. This is the complication of the GNU. Thank you, Thulasizwe.
Thank you for that, Mfundo in Cape Town. Let me go, let me stay in Cape Town and speak to Eddie. Good morning to you, Eddie. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Thulas, and to the listeners. Yes, Thulas, the DA needs to apologize on what the way how they conducted themselves, because really they were not supposed to do this. This man went there in the name of being a deputy minister on this portfolio that he is having. That's why he was not even authorized by the president. He
Wait, Eddie. You're saying he went there where? You mean he went to the U.S. in his capacity as deputy minister?
Yes, on this trade industry. Yes.
No. He went there as part of a DA delegation, so he was on party business.
Yes, of course, but the DA labeled him in that way because they wanted to discuss the business matters.
Yeah.
It might be that we don't know why they chose him, but they chose him for that reason, because he's the deputy minister of the. You see, so what they did there, it was as part of the party, but on the other hand, also as representing the government, which is wrong. Yes, that's why the president cannot tolerate that. Had to fire him for that. It was wrong. The DA need to apologize because they did wrong thing.
All right.
Yes, sure.
All right, Eddie, thank you for that. That's Eddie in Cape Town. Interesting takes that I picked up from at least two of the callers that are saying there's more to it than what has been said. It may not be a simple matter of the permission being sought or being granted. There may be other issues as well that are at play. I will take a call from Mangane in East London. In fact, let me quickly squeeze in that call. Mangane, good morning to you. Short and sharp, please go ahead.
Okay, just to be very brief, some people have already made lots of comments.
Yeah.
I just want to warn us as South Africans. Can we be careful of mixing party versus government business? Because I think there's a confusion here where at one level, the president is an ANC member and acts on behalf of the ANC, and on the other hand is on behalf of the presidency of the country. Because if we conflate the two, we are not going to be able to hold the president accountable for the office he holds versus his membership of the party.
Yeah.
I just want us to be careful in all of this Whitfield issue to just separate those two.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Important point to make there, Mangane in East London. Let me play one voice note very quickly before we take the break and go to Zaikan. It also has to do with this dominant theme. Naturally, this is an issue of concern to many South Africans, or watching it with intrigue, the goings on inside the Government of National Unity. So I'm not surprised that it's receiving as much of a response as it has this morning.
Thulas, good morning. Thulas, isn't it sad that as we take 2 steps forward, we're about to take 3 steps back? This DA guy did nothing wrong. He went on holiday. Cyril's looking for a reason because he's obviously not getting on with one of his cronies. He won't do the right thing. Things are starting to turn, working together as we were supposed to. Mandela's dream from 94. And as we're about to start making progress, and you can see it in certain departments, certain arrests, we start moving backwards. Brad Marisburg.
Brett, thank you for that. I wonder whether, the working together is done and dusted yet. I don't know. We'll have to see and hear what the DA will have to say, because they are saying that all bets will be off if the president doesn't adhere to the 48-hour ultimatum to then fire other ministers within the cabinet that they say have engaged in questionable behavior. Thank you for that. We'll come back to your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes a bit later on.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
James, congrats on the babies.
Yeah, thanks. It's a wild ride.
You're a new dad, 2 babies, 0 sleep, and 1 car that apparently couldn't cope.
Yeah, the hatchback was my baby, but it just didn't have enough space for my 2 new babies.
And are you happy with the price when you sold to WeBuy Cars?
Very. We've even got some extra cash to splurge on one of those fancy prams that you basically need a license for.
Good luck, James. WeBuy Cars. Geared for family, geared for you.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
All right, Zai. There was a listener, by the way, who was trying to take us back on the issue of the cookie and but we've agreed that there's a truce. We've moved on from there. So let's talk about Shukri Conrad and the plans that he has out in Bulawayo. Is it in Bulawayo?
Yeah.
In Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the plan there?
I think, you know what, the coach is saying, if he's good enough for the World Test Championships, he's good enough to hold the number 3 spot. And that's the all-rounder, Jan Mulder. He'll continue batting at number 3, upcoming Test match against Zimbabwe. That's starting on Saturday. It's a bull call by head coach Shukri Conrad. And Mulder, who's averaged just over 22 in tests, admits though the runs haven't flowed, but he's done the technical work and he backs himself as a top order batter. The Proteas will field a relatively inexperienced lineup with players like Dewald Brevis, Matthew Brisker and Luandre Pretorius likely to slot into the middle as well as the lower order. Rugby News, Western Province have confirmed skills guru Labib Levi as head coach of the Cape side for the 2025 Currie Cup campaign. Western Province season gets underway with a north-south clash against the Vodacom Bulls at Cape Town Stadium on the 26th of July. Soccer News, Gomora United team manager Ramaka Setenane does not feel any pity for Highlands Park, a team that has been relegated to the Hollywood Bets Regional League as punishment for playing a defaulter. Now, Highlands Park, a former Premier Soccer League club, they won the ABC Motsepa League in Gauteng. They were expected to represent the province in the national playoffs. Now, the Lions of the North were docked a hefty 62 points after they were found guilty of playing Nigerian attacker Franklin Ogbonna using a fraudulent visa document. And Setenane says this is a harsh lesson for Highlands.
After this, I don't think there's anyone that is going to register the player without doing the proper investigation on that player. Even if he was playing for you last season, you must still go and make the proper research about the player.
Elsewhere, Cristiano Ronaldo has inked a 2-year extension with Saudi Arabia's Al Nassr following months of speculation over which team he will sign for the next season. And finally, the newly elected IOC president, Kirsty Coventry, says the Olympic body will now take the lead on gender eligibility in sport, promising a science-based approach to protect fairness in the female category.
We have to do that to ensure fairness, but we need to do that with a scientific approach and with the inclusion of working with the international federations, whom have already done a lot of work in this area. So we need to bring in the experts. That will take a little bit of time. We need to bring in the international federations so that we have full buy-in to trying to come up with cohesion.
And that's a wrap of the Morning Brief Sport. John Gericke is up at 12:30 with more. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, Action SA has criticized President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to fire Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition and DA MP Andrew Whitfield. Action SA is calling on the President to dismiss all 42 deputy ministers and implement broad reforms to hold his cabinet accountable for incompetence, poor performance and misconduct. Chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, says the ongoing violence, poverty and unemployment in the country has deprived the youth of enjoying the fruits of democracy. And the Iranian foreign minister has admitted that serious damage was done to the country's nuclear sites during the recent US and Israeli bombings. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
The crash scenes on the M1 in Pretoria basically out of the way. It did cause heavy backlogs earlier. Southbound starting to flow, although it's a little bit sluggish. Northbound stays pretty busy. I think there's probably a breakdown between Rigel and Castlefontein after that earlier crash. That hasn't really got moving that much better. R59 going southbound towards the Val now. A crash before Clip River Drive, so queuing pressure there. Collision on Joburg's N3 North at Elan's Interchange, arriving up into that from Spruit View's quite heavy. A crash on the Mike 1 North near 11th Avenue, so coming up from Braamfontein into Parktown on your way towards Sandton, all being backed up as well today. Durban, the M2 northbound up through Spaghetti Junction on your way to Umgeta Road is now moving. It's southbound though on the run to 4 level. It's queuing into a broken down vehicle obstruction. And Cape Town, a crash R300 north at Van Riebeek. That's heavy from Stellenbosch Arterial Road as you pass Kales River on your way up towards the Stickland and Belleville off-ramp. Crash on Nelson Mandela Boulevard going into town by by Strand Street, so that's quite slow as you approach the city centre. And the earlier crash on Marine Drive at Milner's being cleared, but it's left a backlog of traffic coming through Milnerton in towards Lagoon Beach territory. Rob Burton, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning once again to Ndauling Lechela for the last update of the morning. Ndauling, let's talk about consumer confidence. You're saying that it has improved in Q2.
And this is according to the FNB-BR Consumer Confidence Index, showing that sentiment climbed to -10 in the second quarter from -20. While this indicates more willingness to spend, it's important to note that it's still in contractionary territory, indicating that consumers are still pessimistic. Now, the uptick can be attributed to factors like the two-part system withdrawals, lower inflation, interest rate cuts, and reduced fuel prices. Zooming in on income levels, now sentiment was higher among middle-income households, faring better than high-income and low-income consumers. FNB's chief economist, Mamelo Matikinca, said middle-income households usually hold more debt, and so the rate cuts worked in their favor in addition to retirement withdrawals. Meanwhile, the index shows that low-income households were not as optimistic about their prospects, weighed down by high cost of living and increasing food inflation. Looking ahead, the bank expects consumer spending growth to moderate towards 2026 due to expected inflation increases and reduced withdrawals from the two-part system.
Here's some positive news coming out of the economy, something that
yes.
You remember how downbeat I was yesterday and just completely dejected. Tell me about the improvements to the country's rail system and how that is translating to the performance and general conditions for players such as Thungela.
Yes, Tula. So the partnership between big business and Transnet when it comes to that turnaround strategy seems to be yielding some sort of positive results, particularly in the rail network. Now, according to Thungela, the country's largest coal exporter, it has reported a 3% increase in export saleable production for the 6 months ending June, reaching 6.4 million tons compared to 6.2 million tons in the same period last year. Now, Thungela says this was boosted by improved rail performance and the introduction of an additional locomotives on the North Corridor coal line. Zooming in on the operations, Thungela's outgoing CEO, July Ndlovu, says it's making progress on several fronts. The Elders project is ramping up export saleable production in South Africa, while the Zibulu North Shaft is on track for completion in 2026 within budget. Additionally, Thungela acquired the remaining stake in the Insha mine in March, now owning 100% of that operation. However, production there was impacted by challenging geological conditions, resulting in a forecast of 1.6 million tons for the 6 months, down from 2.1 million tons last year. Despite this, Thungela remains optimistic about its prospects, partially driven by improved rail performance.
Lastly, Ntauleng, what kind of a Friday do we have in store in the markets today?
Local markets poised to start the last day of the week mixed following global peers. Now the rand retreating from 7-month highs. It's at 17.82 to the dollar this morning, and this is from highs of 17.58. It hit that yesterday. Over in the U.S., investors are eyeing PCE figures, which is the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. Ahead of that print, futures are a beat in positive territory. Lastly, in Asia, the Japanese stock market is at 6-month highs. They're not filtering through, though, with the Shanghai Composite and the Hong Kong Hang Seng in the red as attention shifts to the looming tariff deadline.
All right, thank you for that. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She's kept you updated on business, the economy, as well as the markets over the last 2.5 hours of the show.
EFC is live this Thursday after months of talk.
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
The middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach and Sua for the middleweight title. EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
All right, let's turn to that story now that I've been talking about all morning. The Supreme Court of Appeal, a decision out of that court, has ignited significant legal and to an extent ethical debate in this country in a case involving a child born with severe brain injury due to medical negligence by state hospital staff. The court made a controversial ruling. It denied the child compensation for pain and suffering and for the loss of amenities of life. Two key components of general damages in personal injury law. At the heart of the court's reasoning is that in relation to the pain and suffering, the child is mainly unconscious and barely aware of their condition of being in pain and suffering. And on the element that has to do with loss of amenities of life, an award, says the court, an award of damages for that element would serve no purpose to a child who has known no other life than that of disability. So let's speak to Professor Henny Klopper, who is Emeritus Professor at the University of Pretoria, but also a practicing attorney and an author of works on personal damages. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time this morning. Just for clarity, this is not a case where no awards for damages was given at all. Special damages, those that are called pecuniary, that can be quantified, amounted to 13 million rand. What you and I are talking about is the 2 million rand that was specifically for pain and suffering, as well as the loss of amenities of life. What did you make of the judgment? It was a split decision. Even the Supreme Court of Appeal itself could not agree on one position.
No,
this is a problem, because as I see the situation is that the distinction that the court makes is not a valid distinction, stating that when one recovers non-patrimonial loss, that you have to experience the damage consciously. What one needs to consider when there is a person who is in a vegetative state, as is the case of this child that was born with cerebral palsy, is that person has had a complete loss of amenities, a full loss of amenities. And that cannot just be disregarded and taken as non-existent, because the claimant is not in a position to appreciate the fact that he's being compensated for such a loss.
Yeah.
The court considered the varying aspects of this problem and consulted foreign law.
Yes.
But as I see it, is that the emphasis that was placed on the requirement that a claimant must experience the loss consciously is not applicable to a state where one has a loss of amenities, because for loss of amenities, it's an objective condition which exists. The person was able to, or is able to, participate in the normal activities of life, but because of his injury is no longer able to do so.
Yeah.
With this child, there was a complete destruction of that ability, and it needs to be compensated. The only reason that one should consider the state of consciousness of such a person is whether the factor that he can appreciate that he's been compensated for the loss is present or not.
Yeah. So, Prof, if I hear you correctly, you're saying even within that, the two elements of general damages, you would still want a differentiation between pain and suffering, which has to do with whether or not the child is conscious and aware of that pain and suffering, and the other element being loss of amenities of life.
Yeah, from pain and suffering, you can appreciate that pain and suffering cannot be claimed for unless it has been experienced.
So if the person is unconscious, perhaps to a certain degree, that pain and suffering is not being experienced.
Yeah, for the periods that he does not experience the pain, he cannot claim for that.
Yeah. What about... please go ahead. I think you were about to make a point.
Yeah. And with the loss of amenities, the whole, in this case, the whole human dignity of this claimant has been negated by a unlawful act. Why should the wrongdoer then be absolved from liability?
Well, in part, in answering that question, Prof, the Supreme Court of Appeal, you will have seen in the judgment, compares the position of the law in English law versus our law. In English law being, what do they call it, objective approach, where you've caused someone to lose the amenities of life, and therefore, whether they're conscious or not, that person must be must be compensated for that. The position in our law, at least according to the SCA, they are saying that, what use that money would be put to is an important factor. That if we give this 2 million rand, what will this child do with it? What do you make of that?
Well, the Supreme Court of Appeal has ignored one important principle of the law of damages, is that when a person claims damages, the damages are payable irrespective of to what use the damages are going to be put. Once a person has proven that he suffered damages, he's entitled to an amount, irrespective of whether he's going to apply that amount to recover the damages that he suffered or not. That is one very important principle or point that the Supreme Court of Appeal has missed, which in my view is an important factor that should have been considered. The fact that the person is not going to apply the damages for the purposes that it has been awarded does not justify a position that he's not entitled to damages because he's proven those damages.
Yeah.
They exist. They can't just be simply ignored.
And for you, nothing turns on the fact that this child will never be aware that I'm missing out on life. I will never be able to play a sport. I will never be able to go on a hike, go on an adventure. You're saying none of that should matter. What should matter is that they've lost.
Is for an aspect of his existence that has been completely lost. Why should he not be compensated for that?
Yeah.
And the argument that the payment of damages is not required because it will eventually devolve on his descendants is not a convincing in my view.
I saw that argument. It says, in essence, this will not compensate this child for, missing out on life, but what will happen is that it will end up being transferred and being inherited by other people, and the SCA saying that an element that's needed is that it should benefit the person who's lost the amenities.
No, but another point of view, of course, is that general damages are not compensable by the payment of money in event. It is an amount which is substitute for a loss that cannot be translatable into rands and cents. So that aspect of it being a solace for the loss of that particular ability or aspect of a person's life is more important than the fact that he appreciates the reason why it's been paid for.
Right. Prof, let me just as a parting shot, ask you this question then. Based on everything you've said this morning and what you read of the judgment, do you believe that there should be occasion for the Constitutional Court to hear this matter and settle it once and for all? If that doesn't happen, what would be the implications?
Yes. You see, there was another judgment in the Gauteng court where this principle of the damages the purpose of the damage not being reached was disregarded, and damages were awarded. But the Supreme Court of Appeal didn't even refer to that particular case. So I think in the circumstances we need a finality on this point, and I think it is not in the interest of society or prospective claimants that they should be non-suited just because of the fact that they cannot appreciate the purpose for which the damages has been awarded.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. That's Professor Henny Klopper, who is Emeritus Professor at the University of Pretoria, but also a practicing attorney and author of works on personal damages. I saw debate raging about this particular matter. Even, I think I saw it on LinkedIn. I saw some leading legal minds weighing in on it, opinion divided. If you are interested, the citation for it is the MEC for Health, Gauteng Provincial Government, being the appellant, and then AAS on behalf of CMMS being the respondent. So the MEC for Health, Gauteng Provincial Government versus AAS on behalf of CMMS. Look it up and read it for yourself and make up your mind what you make of that particular judgment.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, Pretoria's M1 pretty much dealt with. The crash on the M1 South is being cleared a while. Traffic is flowing through there. Northbound a little bit slow on that run through Rigel up towards Garsfontein. Delays coming down the N1 from the Allendale Road into Buccleuch interchange. All of a sudden, that's just got heavy on your way in towards Joburg. Crash on the Mike 1 northbound after Houghton Drive, causing some delays through Parktown. The earlier crash on the R59 north at Michelle and south at Clip River Drive. That's all cleared away. That traffic is flowing again. Durban, the N2 southbound, a broken down vehicle before Spaghetti Junction. That run into 4 level remains under pressure with queues back towards Umgeda Road side. There's a delay now getting up into Pietermaritzburg, a stationary truck before Market Road. You would pick up a queue right back at Ashburton, so that's pretty heavy. And Cape Town, still some rain about, so do take it easy if you're travelling around. Collision R300 north up towards Van Riebeek Road. That's heavy from the Stellenbosch Arterial Road side. And a crash on the N2 inbound Nelson Mandela Boulevard, just before the city centre, causing some delays in from Hospital Bend, but getting a lot better. And don't forget, big Springbok game tomorrow. Springboks taking on the Barbarians. 5:10 is the kickoff. My City are running a lot of free stadium shuttle services, so if you want to avoid the traffic congestion, which will be significant, if you want to avoid parking issues, which also become a problem, those buses, you can pick them up from places like the CTICC, Tybolt Square, Century City, and the Civic Centre as well. So lots of options to get on that free My City Stadium shuttle. They start at those locations from 12 noon tomorrow. Last free bus out of the Greenpoint Stadium area, 9:30 tomorrow night. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This week on FC Meets, former Morocco Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Return game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
EFC is live this Thursday, after months of talk.
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
The middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach and Sua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena, this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel, on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
All right, let me...
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's end it off with your calls and WhatsApp voice notes. I want to do this because I see most of you want to talk about the dismissal of Andrew Whitfield and the implications for the government of national unity. Let me play this one voice note that is different from that theme. And I think this person agrees with me. I assume they agree with me that instead of more malls, we need more community shopping centers where I don't have to pass 101 stores for me to get to the... I just want to pick up one thing. I hope this person agrees with me.
Morning, Thulas. I'm so happy I'm not the only one who feels this way about malls and versus shopping centers. Yo, my brother, you are me, I am you in this instance, Baba. Yo.
It is painful. Going to a mall is just painful. No. And these kids take me there like constantly. Like, why are we going to a mall? And shopping online, as Zelma keeps saying, is really something, you go for specific things. It can't be avoided that you have to do actual shopping. And let me take a call from Mukwena in Rustenburg. Mukwena, I take you now because you are on a very different theme this morning. Talk to me about Edgar Lungu. Good morning.
Good morning, Thulas. Are you good?
Very good. Please go ahead.
It's very cold. There's something that baffles me with the Hakainde Chilema when he's saying that the former president, Edgar Lungu, is a national asset. He belonged to the state. But when we check, I think there was a point where Edgar Lungu announced that he will go and contest for elections. And then from there, I think the privileges of him, of the statement, were removed or revoked, something like that.
Yes.
And how can you say that? Because when he said that, Edgar Lungu said that when I needed medical attention, the state could not fund me. When I needed to flew out of the country to go and look for better medication or health outside the country, the state could not found me. But now, even when he left Zambia to South Africa, he said that he took an economy flight with anyone as a normal person and arrived in South Africa and went on to his business. How can the state now come and claim the person whereas they've revoked or removed those privileges of him being the state president.
Gotcha. Mukwena, thank you for that this morning. You're not the only one who's asking that question that says you stripped him of the benefits of office. And I heard one listener, and I've not looked it up for myself, one listener yesterday saying that that's the provision of the Zambian constitution that says if after the presidency you then return to active politics and you contest, well, you have to live with the consequences that the benefits of office will be stripped of you. I've not checked it for myself. That's what one person was saying. But then the question that Mukwena asks, so if that is the case, why do you insist that this one benefit of a state funeral should extend at this particular point? I've heard one or two people asking that question. Let me play 2 voice notes and then end it off with a call from Butana and Romeo.
The deputy minister and his party, they were trying to undermine Ramaphosa's power and see how Ramaphosa can go. Shorten Mokhalongwa Muleji.
Hi, Thulasizwe. How many ministers were implicated in corruption when President Mbeki fired Minister Routledge for traveling overseas without permission? And how many ministers were implicated in corruption when President Mandela fired Minister Winnie Mandela when she traveled without permission? Yaku Kaizene.
Yeah, Yaku, thank you for that. And I suppose it's worth mentioning that with the case of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, there were other elements that were cited at the time, such as, if I recall, from reading, not that I would remember from my own memory, from reading, that the other elements had to do with her criticizing the government while she was serving in the government. So this traveling was just one of the other elements. Nozizwe Madlala Routledge is a different case as well, slightly different in the sense that when I read the letter that then President Mbeki wrote to the minister at the time, it specifically said that I had specifically declined your request for permission to travel. Andrew Whitfield is slightly different in that he left before the answer could come. And I don't know if the answer was ever going to come because, there's something to be said about that as well because he says the answer didn't come within 10 days, which he thought was reasonable time. And even after that, he wrote and apologized, and even that letter has not been responded to. So those are the other unique elements to this case. Butana in Rosebank, good morning. Also on this issue of Andrew Whitfield.
Good morning, my brother. The ANC then did not have 39% power. They have enough majority. Now is the power-sharing arrangement. The ANC cannot do as they please with 39% power. Days of prerogative are over. You cannot have that. You've got arrangement with DA. You must work with them. We have signed up for that thing. I mean, those 42 deputy ministers, you put those people to bless them. Remember, it's a security. This is even for you, for yourself, as a president. Remember, Pala Pala.
Yeah, Butana, thank you for that. Let's leave it there. Butana in Rosebank, straight to Romeo. Romeo, you are my last caller. Short and sharp for me, please. Good morning.
Okay, Thulas, very short. My brother, we must not forget that the DA and ANC are two opponents. And DA will always undermine and render the ANC useless because they are also contesting to be the ruling party in this country. So they have been making useless our policies, the BEE, the BELA, and everything, so that the ANC can be rendered useless. Thank you, Tula.
All right, Romeo. Thank you for that. That's Romeo in Potchefstroom there, the last caller for the morning. So clearly an issue that is going to be debated and turned over and analyzed and prodded and studied and inspected over the coming days. What the implications of it all for the national governing coalition known as the Government of National Unity, you and I will find out when the 48 hours expires. What will the DA do after that? And what will President Cyril Ramaphosa do within these 48 hours that the DA has given him as an ultimatum? That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your rigorous engagement this morning. The Talking Point with Kete Moshlahlana is up next after the news at 9 a.m. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and you've been briefed.
In our top stories, Action SA slams Whitfield sacking and Iran confirms nuclear sites suffered serious damage. Good morning. Action SA has criticized President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to fire Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition and DA MP Andrew Whitfield. The presidency made the announcement yesterday. Whitfield's dismissal was due to his failure to secure the president's permission to travel to the US as part of the delegation that met with the Trump administration earlier this year. Action SA is calling on the president to dismiss all 42 deputy ministers and implement broad reforms to hold his cabinet accountable for poor performance and misconduct. Action SA's parliamentary caucus leader Athol Trollop.
If he is going to fire Andrew Whitfield, then he must fire all the deputy ministers, because we don't believe that having deputy ministers makes any sense whatsoever. We have noticed their performance in Parliament over the last year. They add no real substantive value. They have no executive authority. And we have one